So this is the Sherborn Select Board meeting of January 8th, 2026. It is 7:01 p.m. In attendance, we have the full board in person, Jeff Waldron, Paul Durensis, Sickle, Marion Neutra, and myself, Stephen Tsai. Can we begin by having the Assistant Town Administrator read the agenda, please?
Good evening. After I read the agenda, the board can vote to amend or approve the agenda. I have a public comment tonight from Chief Zach Ward. Items may be taken out of order and topics not anticipated 48 hours in advance may be added. Our first item is a public poll hearing for 7:05 p.m. Farm Pond Advisory Committee proposed to change language in the Farm Pond sticker application. Catherine Rocchio is here along with her other members of the advisory committee. Item number 3 is a discussion regarding the EV charging stations and usage fee. Mike Wesser, Amelia Landau, and Jeremy Marset will discuss that. Item number 4 is the preliminary review of the FY27 operating budget by Jeremy Marset. Item number 5 is the discussion regarding the warrant article change land acquisition charge. Marion Neutra will speak on that. Item number 6 is a discussion request to lease land at 0 Stevens/0 Harrington Ridge Road for cellular tower for Verizon. Jeremy Marset will speak on that. Item number 7 is the consent agenda, which is the payroll warrant for numbers 13 and 14, draft minutes of November 18th, and a renewal certification for the 2026 for the ABCC licenses, select board reports, and TA reports.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
No, I move approval as read by the Assistant Town Administrator.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All right. So, first off, Chief.
I'll come up just so everybody can hear me. I just wanted to quickly come before the board tonight just to recognize some of our members and some of the work they've been doing. So I was going to just talk about one particular incident, but I just wanted to very briefly touch on a couple other things. We just finished our busiest year in our recorded history there with a little over 900 calls, approximately 22.5% increase from the year before, about 150 more than the year before. A lot of that has to do with the December 19th storm that we just had. We responded to a little over 100 calls in about a 30-hour period. It was a little intense there for all the town departments, including the DPW and the police for some time, but everybody pulled together and we got through that and tried to get the power restored as quick as possible. December was very busy, started with the small house fire in Whitney Drive, which is off of Whitney Street in the beginning of the month. And then we ended with a really serious fire on Colonel Isaac Way, which is also off of Whitney Street. So I just wanted to talk about that and the work that our members did. Department responded shortly after 12:30 in the morning on December 28th to report a garage fire. Most of our members responding knew that there was a serious fire because they could see it from Maple Street, the glow in the sky from the flames. They arrived to a large garage, fully involved with flames about 50 feet in the air. And the building was situated 12 feet away from a duplex that was at the time, because of the holiday season, occupied by about 15 people. Our members got there. They made a really strong and a disciplined decision to let the garage burn. Really hard to do, to not put a fire out, and they directed their water and all their resources into saving the duplex because they made the decision that the garage was already gone. But if you look at history and you look at the fires that we have, and if you look at the amount of fire on arrival and the potential spread to that duplex, it's a pretty rare fire for any community, especially a town like Sherborn. We actually had one similar to this 18 months ago, but this one was several times worse than that one. We had 13 towns there. I just wanted to give them a shout out: Ashland, Millis, Dover, Norfolk, Framingham, Halston, Medfield, Natick, Hockenton, Medway, Hopedale, Upton, and Wayland covered us throughout the incident. Our members went out just after 12:30, and most of them got home just before 8 o'clock in the morning. on that Sunday. So unfortunately, that incident ruined a lot of their weekend plans with their families. But they absolutely knocked it out of the park. I was out of state. One of the very few nights that I was away this year, and I got a lot of phone calls from chiefs early that next morning, just to give them a lot of kudos for how they saved that building next door. So definitely a huge effort on their part. Just couldn't be more. I know a lot of the board members come to our awards night every year. Certainly talk about it more there, but I just wanted to come before you and just inform you about some of the work that your firefighters have been up to. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, ball games.
Thank you.
And the team, too.
Thanks. Absolutely.
I just want to say, when you called me in the middle of that run of 100 calls, the
Yeah.
people I work with were like, "Was that really the fire chief? Like the fire chief
Yeah.
called you?" I was like,
Yeah.
they have no idea what I do here."
Yeah. So just for those that don't know, there are about 20 Sherborn residents on a list that I use in power outage situations. I call Marion all the time. I call Paul, like,
Yeah.
depending on where you live, I might call you and say, "Hey, do you have power right now?" And I called Steven in the middle of that. We were trying to figure out where the power was on Green Lane. We had like 3 fires and a whole bunch of other things going on. And Steve was great. So thank you.
I was actually the only one that had power, but I couldn't get home because I went to the post office and came back and 2 trees had fallen down. So I couldn't, and they put it off Ivy Lane, I couldn't get home. Because both roads were blocked. And no one was even on the scene yet because there's so much going on.
So what'd you do, huh? Spent the night in the car?
No, I didn't. I was able to come around from the back side. They cleared part of it, but it was crazy. Like when I got to the first situation on Lamplighter, there was no one there because they were busy responding to much more major streets in town. It's pretty severe.
All right. So now item 1, the public poll hearing, which is scheduled for 7:05 p.m. So slightly late on it.
Christine Crosby from Eversource is on the line there. I think it's her with the phone number. Christine?
Yes, this is Christine.
Great. We're on your item for the poll hearing.
Yeah,
Need to open the hearing.
Oh, yeah. All right. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing for the poll?
Second that.
So moved. And you seconded it.
So moved.
All right, we'll call that moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So-
Excuse me. Hi. My name's Jen Hawkins, and the pole issue is near my house, and it's to clear up a problem at my house. And so, did it just get approved? Has the new pole been approved? Which is what I'm hoping that you just said.
I know all we've done is open the hearing, so now
Okay.
we're gonna have a discussion and then we'll vote at the end of it.
All right. Well, I'm here to tell you why it's a good idea, but I'll just be off until you need to ask me questions.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, so sorry, was it Christine?
Yes.
yes.
All right, if you want to give us a summary of the poll situation.
Yes, we're petitioning for a grant of location for a pole on Coolidge Street. And it's a push brace pole that would be located at existing pole 13/43. Presently, that pole is being supported by a guy wire that's attached to a tree that's across the street, the tree guy. And the property owners wish to have the tree removed. So therefore, we have to remove the tree guy, but the pole needs the support so that it doesn't lean into the property located, on that side of the street where the pole is. This is a kind of a bad corner there, and the overhead strain from the wires, it will cause that pole to lean into the property behind it, So that is the reason why we're looking for a push brace to be placed on that pole, to provide the support and to allow the removal of the tree guy.
All right, thank you very much. So first I would like to open it up to public comment. So Hawkins, I don't know if you want to sort of give us your summary of the reason why this is an issue right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, The tree guide is in a tree that's easily 100 years old in my yard, and it's got a substantial amount of decay on it. And I need to have a great deal of it removed. And when I had somebody come to see about removing most of the tree, they said they cannot work on it because of the tree guide. And so I have a 100-year-old tree that is over the roof of my house that needs to be trimmed substantially, and it cannot be done until the tree guide wire is removed.
Any other public comments? If not, I'll bring it up to the select board. If the select board has any comments or questions. Ms. Paul.
I want to just say I'm recusing myself on this because of my complicated relationship with Eversource.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'm struggling with the issue. In other words, can the guide wire be removed temporarily and replaced afterwards, or what do we need to consider here?
My understanding from Eversource is that guide wires and trees on people's property is an expired notion. It's been there for probably 30 to 35 years, and they no longer do that as a way to secure poles. That's what Eversource has told me because I've been in touch with them since November about having this resolved.
Yes, that is correct. We do not install tree guides anymore. And like you said, they did that many years ago, but it's not just we just don't do it that way anymore.
Sean, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the only other option here would be another pole across the street from this pole. And I believe would still be Jen's front yard. And then it would be a pole on the outside of that curb, which would be more unsightly than the push brace.
And it wouldn't just be unsightly, it would be a target because we know how dangerous that corner is. The push brace will not be as much of a target for cars as the pole being placed on my property would be.
For neophytes like me, could someone just say what a push brace is and what it looks like?
Utility pole, push brace.
Okay.
There's 2 poles before it on Coolidge Street.
Yeah, okay.
Or maybe
Okay.
a pole. Sure.
Yep, okay, thanks.
The push brace would be placed. The push brace would be placed behind the pole, like other ones are, and it's going to be like in a wooded area off the road, with this large boulders, surrounding it. So it's really, in an area that I think would be more suitable than in somebody's driveway or.
Right. Any other select board comments or questions?
Well, I'm still struggling with what the options are, I guess. Not fully understanding. Eversource is planning to not remove the brace. I'm not understanding what.
I think there isn't a brace right now, right? There's a guide wire,
Right.
which needs to be removed to do the tree
The
work.
tree work.
So then they're instead going to put a push brace in.
A push brace instead of a
Right.
guide wire.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying, Jen, is you'd like to have the guide wire replaced? Is that what you're trying to do?
Well,
Have it work?
I have to have my tree worked on so that my house and my roof is safe. And I
Yes.
cannot work on that tree until the guide wire is removed. And NSTAR is saying they have to replace the guide wire with their new method of bracing poles like this, which means a side brace, which is next to the pole. And so Eversource has to apply to you to be able to do that brace. Once they do the brace, they can take down the guide wire. Once they take down the guide wire, I can have the tree work done, and then I can rest easily with all these windstorms and not have a 100-year-old tree over my roof anymore.
I'm not sure what the issue is then. Is it-
I think we just need to approve the
Just
push brace.
approve- Okay.
Because there isn't
was
one.
I think it's just a formality. They can't do it without our
There was
permission.
an understanding. All right, that's fine. So we want to, do we have to make a motion to accept the proposed Eversource installation?
Yeah.
So I'll make that motion
Well, I need to put it back out to public comment again before I
Okay,
open
that's
the
fine.
session. So So if we're done discussing, any additional public comments? All right, hearing none, I'm gonna close the comment session and open the voting session, so I'll entertain motion now.
Yeah, I would move to approve Eversource's plan to put a push brace on the pole and remove the guide wire on the pole, change the support structure.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. It's 4-0 and Paul Lorenzus is abstaining. All right, so that's it.
Super, thanks for listening and thanks for your support of the project.
Sure.
Can I get a motion to
Thank you.
close the public hearing as well?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded, all in favor? Okay, all right, on to item
Thank-
number 2. Thank you, Christine.
Stand by.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Item number 2, Farm Pond Advisory Committee proposal to change language in the Farm Pond sticker application. Catherine?
Catherine Rocchio, 60 Harrington Ridge Road, Chair of the Farm Fund Advisory Committee. We divide and conquer, and I'd like to introduce Caitlin Sullivan, who's an associate committee member. She's going to talk to you about this.
Yeah, so we want to add language to the farm pond sticker. And the purpose of the proposed change is to clearly communicate expectations, consequences upfront so that farm pond can be used safely, fairly, and responsibly by everyone. This does not change any existing rules themselves. It only clarifies the consequences of violating them. The intent isn't to be disciplinary, it's to be clear. Most people follow the rules when they understand them. And this language that we're proposing will help prevent problems rather than punish people after the fact. The language that we're proposing to add to the application would be violation of any pond rules by the sticker holder or their guests may result in immediate loss of pond access privileges and sticker revocations for the remainder of the season. You might be asking, why is this change needed? And right now, the rules exist, but the consequences for violating them are not clearly stated in the sticker application. By adding the clear language, we ensure that applicants understand before receiving a sticker that breaking the rules can result in losing the access to the pond for the season. We want to set clear expectations and follow compliance. So when expectations and consequences are clearly spelled out, people are more likely to follow the rules. This reduces the misunderstandings, disputes, and repeat violations that we're seeing. It also encourages sticker holders to be more mindful of their own behavior and how the pond is used. We will be clear that a single minor violation will not automatically result in a loss of a sticker. The language will allow enforcement when necessary, but doesn't remove discretion. Everyone, and why we think this is important is for fairness and enforcement. Everyone is treated the same and decisions are made on a case-by-case or subjective basis. It reduces claims of unfair treatment because the rule was acknowledged at the application time. You might ask, could this expose the town to complaints or appeals? Actually, it reduces that risk. Clear written language acknowledged at application time strengthens the town's position and reduces claims of unfair or inconsistent enforcement. This change provides safety, discourages environmental damage, and helps preserve the pond for long-term community use. It also reduces the management burden by limiting issues and minimizing the need for warnings or ongoing enforcement conversations. Clear language shows that the town took reasonable steps to inform users or rules and consequences, which helps reduce liability and protects the town. Last little blurb I have for you. Overall, this is a modest but important clarification that approves safety, fairness, and stewardship while protecting both the pond and the town. This is a proactive step. Even a small number of incidents create safety concerns, staff time, and disputes. Clear expectations help prevent those issues from escalating.
Thank you. So I have a question. at least as far as the memory of everybody, anyone in this room, has a farm pond sticker ever been revoked?
Not that I know of.
Well, there you go. But currently, let's say that somebody, is misusing their access, like what would the procedure be? I know that there is nothing defined currently, but I know that that's what we're trying to address right now, but like
Right.
up until now, what would, let's say theoretically somebody did do something very bad, dumped bleach in the farm pond.
Or brought a boat with a motor.
Mhm,
and
right.
Said they didn't have a motor and slipped it into pond. We call the police, or
Yeah.
someone calls the police. And then there's nothing really the police they can really do.
But
Yeah. Yes.
for more minor infractions that could be important for the health of the pond, you wouldn't have to call the police every time. You don't want to, but what is the less drastic step?
I mean, I think, if there's like people are having a picnic on the beach, I think the lifeguards try to address it, the reservation manager tries to address it. I mean, there's a lot of we try to address it, Pat tries to address it. People look at us and walk the other way generally, but at any rate, we wanted to have some teeth like
I think
codified.
it's very good to have this clarity because anyone in town can help you enforce it if they know the rules for sure.
Steve,
Mhm.
so I support the idea. It's a good idea. It's good legally. The language needs to be tweaked a little bit because it violates the United States Constitution as written. So it just needs a little bit of editing. I could try to do it now, or
Kate.
I wouldn't try to. I wouldn't try to adopt this right now. It needs a few words. We're close. We're very close, and Far Pond shouldn't be having a lot of swimmers right now, given the weather.
We actually have a whole lot.
Well, we just wanted to get this in
Ice will do it.
want to get it in place before people buy their stickers for the year. That's all. So when you buy the sticker, you fill out a form. This wording would be on the form. You'd implicitly, by buying the sticker, say if you act poorly, you accept the fact that your sticker could be taken away.
So then subsequently, with the new form, with this
Wording on it.
on it, and then somebody brings in an inflatable motorboat, then what would happen?
And we're not really changing that whole piece right now, right? We're starting with this. What would happen is what happens now, probably, but there's at least the option of revoking the sticker.
Yeah, but like, would it be the Farm Pond Advisory Committee?
No, we don't get involved. We don't get involved with that. It's
Yes.
the reservation manager. Oh, who would revoke?
Who would revoke the sticker?
I think I think the reservation manager police could.
Cause what we heard from the police was like, they can't do anything. Like, they're like, we can tell them to take their boat out, but like, there's no. Like, we can't do anything. There's nothing within the application that's saying if you do something, this is the consequence. So that's where we're getting repeat offenders because they're not getting punished.
Yeah.
They're just getting, and like the poor police are going down there being
Right.
like, can you take your motorized boat out of the pond? And they're like, oh yeah, sorry, I didn't know.
Right.
Right. And so it's that, so it's like,
So this is the question, and I don't know if Paul, if you can answer it as a lawyer, but like, does that actually give the Sherborn Police the authority to take any particular action?
So the wording that I had done preparatory for this meeting was to designate the reservation manager with the authority to both take action and to be the hearing officer for the required hearing. And if that's the case, the police only do what is told by the reservation manager. They don't make any judgments at all. I just have it scribbled down here, unfortunately.
But we could authorize or designate the reservation manager as the authority who could then
Yeah, you have to
instruct the police
designate
do-
somebody to do it.
Right, but that's an okay path to take, to say the reservation manager will do it. As opposed to
Yes.
this needs to be a advertised public hearing with the select board.
Right. Otherwise, it would default to us, and then we have to give notice and opportunity to be heard, write to council, all that kind of stuff before
Yeah,
the thing is revoked.
that was the huge mess that I imagined this ballooning into. That I was like, wait, how's this actually going to work?
But the reservation manager can make a decision, and then it would be subject to appeal to the Board of Selectmen.
We'll do Jeff first and then Jeannie.
I think I'm having a more fundamental problem with this is how is the person to know what constitutes an offense of significant degree in order to have your farm pond sticker revoked? And, I'd actually been swimming there. This was probably 20 plus years ago when someone put a beautiful mahogany boat in the water with a motor, and it was an electric motor. So it was silent, but you're not allowed to have any motors. So I don't think it's going to work well because now you're saying you're going to make the reservation manager make a judgment on whether or not this was a magnitude offense to revoke someone's farm pond permit, but there's no definitions of what constitutes a minor versus a major offense. I don't think we have to list every possibility, but I don't think we want to I know the reservation manager, I don't think we want to put them in a position of making a judgment call with nothing other than their sort of intuitive sense to back it up. And I don't think that will work.
Their judgment's only temporary.
It's what?
It's only temporary. Whereas the reservation
Well, what's the
manager.
process then? I mean, for if there's no appeal or no.
There has to be an appeal. There has to be a due process hearing.
So
But you
that's
can
the
have the
language you're going
hearing.
to draft?
You can have the hearing after the action taken. And I think what they're trying to say is that they want to have the ability when someone is polluting the pond to stop them and get them out. So you empower the person to do that. That's a temporary suspension of the right to use the pond. But that's always has to be followed up with a full hearing. So you can have the reservation manager do the hearing, but then ultimately it would come to us. Or you can have it directly go to us.
Jeannie and Linda.
First of all, it wouldn't really be the reservation manager. Our reservation manager is the person who does any repairs. He sets the place up. It would probably be something more of the waterfront director, who's usually in the parking lot a good part of the time, going back and forth. We haven't had a lot of repeat offenders with this. But we do have to have something in place that people understand that putting a boat with a motor at Farm Pond is not the best idea, especially when it states on the boat permit and on signage that you can't do that. I think part of the problem too is how would you revoke the sticker? How would you get the sticker? These are things that need to be thought of, but I just wanted it would not be the reservation manager that would be doing this.
Does the waterfront director?
It could be the waterfront director. It could be, they could report it to whether it's our office, whether it's the police. If it's in place, it could be that you did what you weren't supposed to do. I don't know if you want to do it for a first time offender, but it is something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
So I also in concept support doing this makes good sense. Obviously, there's some complicated bits as it turns out to work through. I wonder on Jeff's point, if could cover something about that, about indicating that with a serious offense, or have some language that makes it clear that it's not some minor violation, but if there's a serious offense, and probably don't need to define exactly what that is, but just to clarify that if you do something really stupid, you're going to get your sticker taken away. If you do.
I wanted to ask, when one applies for a sticker, and gets the sticker, is there information included in the sticker package that explains what is against the rules and what is like a serious infraction and would spell out what the consequences are so that no one is surprised when it happens?
Well, we could do that. We don't say what is a serious.
I mean,
I don't
want
want
it
to
to
remember
be
exactly what we sent. We have written like letters, we've written but I forget what goes with a sticker application.
I mean, at least then you could say, well, everyone who gets a sticker has seen the rules.
Rules, yes. I thought the
And-
rules were on the sticker application, but I couldn't remember.
Oh,
You can do it
that-
online now too.
The
But
ru-
then
the
it gets
rules-
sent to you, when your sticker is sent to you, you get the insert sent.
The insert
Right.
is what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
The insert is sent out to all excise tax people with the application for your sticker, and the rules are on the back of that. So people do understand what they are, and when they get a boat permit, which is the biggest offense, the rule about no motors is right there, and that the boats have to be washed down, and everything is on that boat permit.
But Jeannie, I have a question. Can you get a boat permit without having a farm pond sticker?
Yes,
I thought people
because
could just put boats in. See, I think this idea, to be candid with you, is half baked right now. I understand what you're trying to do, and you've got some concerns about protecting the pond, but many of the boats aren't coming with a farm pond sticker. So maybe the most serious offenses aren't people that got the sticker. I think we need to do a much better job of defining what Marion said better than I did. What are the conditions for which there could be a more severe infraction?
well,
But also, we need to address if it's someone that's not a farm pond sticker holder.
but Jeff, when they do get boat permits, I mean, if they do something with that boat, like bring a boat in with a motor on it, we just can revoke the boat permit. I mean, they have to have
Right.
that to
I
get
know, but this
the
is related to
sticker.
the farm pond stickers. So we've talked about people putting boats in the water, but
Well,
That-
they
that may
tuck
not-
their little kayaks into the back of their trunk.
no, I swim the perimeter of the pond, as I think you know, a dozen times the summer. I see everyone on the
Okay.
pond. So I'm pretty familiar with it.
I think the idea, Caitlin innocently said, well, when I ski, people, you can get your sticker yanked if you're acting out. We thought that this similar idea.
We've come up with the penalties, but we haven't defined what the penalties would be applied to, is I think what Marion said better than I. I don't think this is ready for review yet, to be honest with you.
Well, can I-
When are farm pond stickers going to go on sale?
They will probably go on sale the first week in March.
Okay, so there's a little bit of time to just,
can I just-
But
yes,
But
go ahead.
real quick, Pammy will be sending out the excise tax with the flyer in it. I just need to find out from her when those will go out.
Right. But is that going to have, that has the application in it?
Yeah,
Paul and then Jeremy.
I just want to make it clear that no one can revoke the permit just by saying your permit's gone. That's unconstitutional. What has to happen is like a provisional revocation or a suspension, if you will. They have a right to a hearing. Hopefully they waive the hearing. And they take their boat and go back to Colorado or wherever the boat came from. But we don't need to worry about where the sticker is, because you literally cannot have someone open up their car and scrape the sticker off the windshield or wherever it's affixed off a car window that way. This isn't that kind of society and that kind of government.
Well, I mean, it seems like generally speaking, the select board is supportive of the idea of what you're trying to do. And it's just the execution of it so far that's a little bit too squishy, basically. Would it, Paul, can I ask you to work with the Farm Pond Advisory Committee to basically flesh out the plan, figure out, again, how to better define the violations and, what the procedure would be for,
Sure.
yeah. And then we can hopefully have that by our next meeting from now. Is that gonna give you enough time to have it ready before the applications go out, Jeannie?
The applications, I just talked to Pammy and they will go out the end of February, beginning of March. So you could even push it out a little longer than your next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something in the conversation, maybe ask a question, but there's farm pond reservation rules and regulations that are on the town's website and posted, presumably adopted by the select board previously. In those rules and regulations, it says the reservation rules are enforced at all times all year long. Violators may be fined up to $200 or punished or prohibited from use of the reservation. Included in that are, the borders of any kind on the pond. I'm curious, what's the enforceability of these rules and regulations to issue a fine? It would cover folks that are non-sticker users or sticker users.
Yeah. I'm not overly concerned about the definition of the rules and regulations because they are defined and they're posted somewhere. It's more just we are now saying that the sticker might be revoked if you do such and such. And to me, that it's like, okay, well, you push that button, all right, well, now what happens, right? Who are the people that run and start making that happen? And is it an actual legal process that and well-defined process?
But is there also going through some enforcement mechanism already? $100 fine, who would do that? Is it?
So when we adopted that, we did have it reviewed by town council, number one. Number two, remember that originally this was a great pond and it was under the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth. And we fought for and got a conveyance by the Commonwealth to the town. This is now our property. So originally, a lot of the rules and regulations were set up where the only thing that we owned was the parking lot and the beach. But now we own the waters themselves, the entire pond. And as owners, we have rights that are complementary to our police power to regulate. So, for example, any property owner has the right to say someone's not allowed on their property. And because this is town property, we always have the right to say anybody coming on this property who's been designated as unwelcome is subject to being prosecuted for trespass. So there are all kinds of remedies that come from our being owners, in addition to having the general police powers.
Great. All right. So then, Paul, can you work with the advisory committee and maybe should we go for 2 meetings from now, which would be the our first meeting in February. So I think it would be the second week of February. Basically 4 weeks from that should be enough time.
Okay.
Then hopefully we can vote on it and get it going.
Since I'm here, I'm just going to give a 2-second update on the Farm Pond Advisory Committee. What we've been doing, we're actively reviewing 2 documents. Jeremy's helping too. It's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, but we're reviewing a watershed-based plan and a recommendations for how to manage the pond. So we're in it. They were late in coming to us, and then we're a little taking our time to review it. But we will hopefully be reviewed fully by January 20th. Anyway, that's what we're up to.
All right.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next we have discussion regarding EV charging stations and usage fees. Landau, Jeremy Marset, and Mike Lesser.
I'll speak first. And
Feel free to come sit at the table because the room mic is this little
okay.
three-pointed guy in the middle of
Yeah, I
the
don't have the strongest voice.
table.
Okay, it's been I guess who knows, let's say about 9 months since we have this fast charger, and it's been over a year since we have the other chargers there. So this is sort of a little review of where we are and what principles we want to follow in using these and putting the prices for that, because basically we receive grants to put them in, but we get to set the pricing and we pay for the electricity and the operating costs for these two chargers. Some of the costs were funded by the initial grants. So to me, for today, I sort of have two parts. There's a handout that got put to you later, but I just want to do it in two phases. One is just sort of talk about a general policy issue, guiding the pricing, and then about what we actually might do in the short term, these two chargers. The basic policy issue is whether we essentially cover our full operating costs for those chargers, or there's any not subsidizing, it's any cost sharing, if you want to do it, since I have a problem with the word subsidizing in this case, but that whether we basically just follow the principle of full cost recovery. We haven't quite got there, but whether that's our basic guiding principle in setting the pricing for those units, along with that has to go obviously in parallel with what prices are in the marketplace out there. And so I'm speaking here as, I guess I should say, Michael Lesser, 54 Forest Street, and I'm a member of the Energy and Sustainability Committee, or co-chair, but we have not voted on anything. I'll basically give my 2 cents as in that position. I mean, I'm recommending that we basically follow a principle of covering my full operating cost of the chargers, and not getting any support to the users who come from the public to do it. I think the climate change issues are significant, but there are lots of ways that this program is for electric vehicles is being supported. Basically, even the grant for the equipment has been working. I mean, there's a number of reasons where there are other ways that this program is being supported, and therefore I don't think it's in our place to go and support that any further than it is now. And so I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as to that principle, how we would follow and how we price the chargers. I'll stop there. Take any questions about that whole concept. Right now, to date, we have been basically bearing some of the cost. There was some initial trial period where I was charging it all for a few months. And right now, there are some issues about the fact that the pricing is below our cost. And we want to rectify that. So we've probably spent a few $2,000 on one of the chargers. The original level 2 one has probably been covered by the town at this point, basically trying to get guidance, push how we would do it for, let's say, the rest of this year and fiscal 27 going forward, what should be the guidance and agreement about that kind of what we're doing. I'll stop there and you can ask any. So that.
Go ahead.
Just to add a little bit of context to Michael's discussion, the initial installation was covered by grants, but the ongoing operational cost for the overheads for the background dashboards that operate them, there's 2 separate companies that are involved. Unfortunately, they don't mesh. But there's also electricity costs. Those costs are currently covered in your operating budget, town's operating budget, in the town building operating budget, just for reference.
Is it typical in other municipalities that, have chargers that the price they set, is at a break-even point that it's a revenue generator or that there is some cost sharing.
Well, I guess maybe you might know some from others, but what I see is that they're generally trying to cost. I don't think that's very accurately done. When I look at what other people do, I don't know what you've heard from other towns, from a few I've talked to, it seems like they're trying to cover costs.
Sorry, I'm still getting over a cold. So in speaking to other people who have my equivalent position in other towns, there seems to be basically two regimes for running EV chargers, and that's for the municipalities that have kind of the extra capital to just invest in it as a revenue source. And so we're talking like I think Chelmsford has 30 and Cambridge has 130, and that's the sort of return on investment there is a lot greater when they have that many sources of revenue. For us and other small towns that might have only one or two, or they might only have the charging stations that they're using for electric vehicles in their fleet and they don't have them public facing, those towns tend to set prices that are only expecting to cover a certain proportion of costs and instead using operating budgets to support the other costs that the town itself is benefiting from. The way we currently have it set up by going through the town buildings, we just kind of generally get this fund from town operating budget. But one of the most significant users of electricity that's driving up our costs is the police electric vehicles. And obviously, as we strive to further electrify that fleet and other vehicle fleets, it might be wise in the future to try to, incorporate that into those fleet budgets themselves, as an example. So there's plenty of ways to do it, and I've been talking with other towns about sort of their best practices. But again, our size dictates a lot of how, what we're able to manage in terms of expectations for revenue.
Does the density of users, the density of usage factor into this? That is, they're often standing there with no car being charged, and presumably, is that a problem for Sherborn?
We need more demand to break even here, and we'll see whether that happens as people buy with the vehicles or it gets known and whatever. Use hasn't been going up on, let's say, the fast one. It is a desirable thing there, and the use has been going up. Hopefully, it'll keep growing.
I think the charges are like listed on the
all the software,
right.
plug share and things like that, where basically you can see where the nearest one. We're actually the only one in the immediate area. There's a bunch of them up by the shopping mall, and then there's all these superchargers at the Tesla has around, and
Right.
can't even find their pricing. But
So I guess my question really was, if usage was higher in Sherborn, if they were occupied more of the time, would it be easier to break even?
Right. So I put sort of a factoid about it in the packet. Basically, the way that because some of our costs are from the software costs, but also some of the costs are from electricity, the increasing electricity use from increased demand would obviously add to our costs.
Sure.
But if we are charging a proportional amount to cover those costs, we can then slowly also, cover the electricity and then also slowly cover the operating cost. So in terms of Sherborn's density, there's Chelmsford, like I just mentioned, they have a very popular fast charging station off of Route 3, and so that's where most of their revenue comes in. We are nicely strategically placed right off of Route 16, so that's definitely counts for something. But I think the majority of our usage here, it has to do with our location nearer to town center, and also the fact that this is one of the only workplaces in town. Oftentimes when they're strategically placed around not just places where people go to shop, but also places where people will just have to be there all day. That's when you see the most increase. So because we're a smaller town with less economic activity, it's harder to, target those. But I would say that our location isn't necessarily to our detriment. It's just that I would certainly be willing to take on more responsibilities trying to more market the fact that we have these chargers here in order to increase demand in a way that doesn't also increase our electricity.
Dan and then Jeff.
So a couple of questions and then a few comments. What's the balance of use between the level 2 and level 3 charger?
The level 3 charger has more unique users than the level 2 chargers. We're currently at around 40. The 2 police vehicles are not included in that. I think
Right.
three town vehicles and the rest being public. So between the 2 of them, we definitely have more interest, I guess I would say, in the level 3 if we wanted to focus more in there. But I think that's just because of the convenience of it.
It's about 2-1. It's about
2-to-1.
2-1.
Ish, whatever. Yeah.
Roughly, and that one is rising. This one has gone up and down. That's what, it's a little problematic, as I'll come to the next tier. It's problematic whether we maintain this.
Yeah, yeah. Any sense of who the users are? I mean, are these people who don't have access to a charger at home, or is it just the convenience of during the day charging, or it's less expensive to charge here than at home, or who?
I think
Any
it's
sense?
just people pass, for the example, right now on that charger, which gets the most users.
Yeah.
And it's getting closer to break even. To date, 2/3 of the use is the police.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
they're getting the power at a reasonable price, so
Yeah.
it's fair, but so it's unclear for the 400, for the relatively not that many people that are using it. It's unclear who they are. We actually do have IDs for them.
Okay.
It's sort of, I find it interestingly, invasion
And then one
privacy.
One other background question, then as I said, a couple comments. When you referenced maintaining covering operating costs, should I think of that as like marginal cost of electricity, or does that include allocated costs for the overhead software, the running the dashboard, and the if we're going to use that language, fixed cost versus marginal cost, it's a full operating cost here, meaning
Right, we have a
everything.
fixed cost of the software.
Yeah.
And then some of the electricity cost is somewhat fixed. For example, they vary differently. That only has a $20 a month
Yeah.
service charge, which is fixed. That one has a $225
Yeah. Okay.
charge. So there's, within the electricity tariff itself,
Right.
there's some fixed ones and some that are variable.
Yeah. But then we also have the overhead, like the upcoming 1,280 if we renew the level 2 charger.
Oh, you're right. The software, that's the software
Yeah,
network.
yeah. And that's
Cost.
when you say full operating costs, it's intending to cover
Yes.
all of it. Okay. Okay. That's
I
helpful.
mean, I'd like to even go back. I mean, previously to go back to, we put in costs. So it was $4,000 that we put into
Yeah.
that one there too.
Yeah.
But whether that we can see over time.
Okay. So, that's good. So then a couple comments on just my thinking about this. I think I would prefer to see that these got to a point where we were, as you suggested, were covering full operating costs, and that the users who are using them, it's a wonderful convenience that they're there, and that's, I think, providing a great service. But it feels to me like a strain on the operating budget for the town to be. I know you don't like the word subsidized. I'm not quite sure what other word to use, but to be subsidizing people who, maybe coming from out of town, stopping here to use the charger. And to me, that would be a burden on the operating budget as compared to, pricing, as you said, in a way that covers full operating costs. If there were a subsidy, again, I don't have a better word.
Use the word for that, where we do it for other stuff.
Yeah. I would think we would want to have, if it's $2,000 a year, from the operating budget, we don't have an explicit line in the town building budget that, in the budget, it specifically says $2,000 to cover extra costs of the EV chargers. So there's transparency, and everybody in town knows and presumably could agree that that's a good thing. I would prefer not to go there, but if people want to, I think we'd want to have transparency.
That's part of why,
about it.
I mean, in the end, with sort of management issues.
Yeah.
One is just basically having an annual report where we just keep.
Right. Would be very helpful.
It's a simple thing just for us to learn ourselves.
And then I think here I'm probably jumping ahead because you were going to get to this, but I guess I'd put the question on the table of, you hinted at this, but should we just let the level 2 charger go, not spend the $1,300 to restart that? And then, if the demand is growing for level 3 charger and that gets to a point where it's self-sustaining, maybe there'd be a point in the future where it would make sense to do another level 3 fast charger, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll get there given our location, but right, as they're right there.
I mean, I just wonder.
We went, I think what I'm suggesting, or proposing, or recommending, or we are that we basically give it another year. We're only gonna do a
Okay,
one-year
okay.
contract and see if we could do some tweaking and see if things change. And if during the year it's not looking good, then we can make an assessment.
I mean, from my quick look at the numbers, and I realize that it's very squishy and hard to do this, but it feels to me like we'll be spending $1,280 next week so that we can lose $2,000 over the next year. And that
Well, we won't lose
doesn't,
that 2,000.
that doesn't, I just raised the question of whether that's something that, we ought to consider of just,
We also have to
Shutting
find
that
out what
one
our
down.
obligations are for having gotten the grant for that too, but on the other hand,
sure.
I think we could,
I'm
we could do another year and figure that out. I mean, by-
Raising the question.
Amelia.
Just to respond to that.
Yeah.
I actually, now that you bring up reporting, I do fill out a quarterly report for Mass EVIP, which was the funding source for the level 3 charger. So we do at least have some regularity with that data. I would maybe be able to use that as a template that we could use, provided that we have access to the software to track the charging and revenue, et cetera. That would be a pretty easy, like, one-to-one way to compare because it's asking the same data. Concerning what should happen to the level 2, Michael and I are in agreement that we should still give it another year to renew. There are no, in our investigations, we haven't really been able to find any ways to lower those software costs. So if we kept the level 2 on, we would just be accepting that it would be that no matter if we changed any kind of contract or equipment or third-party software or anything like that. That being said, you'll notice that one of the trends that we identified is an issue with the demand charges being provoked by using both ports of the same charger at once. And this, again, has its own ramifications that, I think your approval would be sought on. But blocking off one of those ports so that we never incur those demand charges and only one port is available would help both lower the electricity costs and perhaps also slightly drive up usage just because of scarcity and needing to, select your time window more, accurately. So that's definitely something that we could try, that even though it wouldn't totally eliminate those costs, over the next year we could see how it would influence at least the electricity costs independent of the software costs.
Yeah, I hear you. Again, I just wonder, since you said that the demand is more for the level 3 than the level 2, there's much more interest in that for obvious reasons, given the fast charge. Again, I just asked the
different
question.
kind of users in a way.
Yeah,
People
just asking the question of whether it's a good thing for us.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're sort of, right, we're up against the wall here in the sense of that it's unfortunate that we have to, somehow this is sitting in the back burner a little bit and we have to just decide tonight, so to speak, because they're ready to rescind it. Although even if they're rescinded, maybe we can get it reactivated if we changed our mind. But yeah, I mean, and they probably won't be too happy about the fact that the issue of closing off one port on that thing that that's probably doing it as a public record here, but it's sort of I don't know whether there's any issues with doing it, but I think we should be able to just limit it to one port. I don't know if I don't think it'll change demand, but I think it'll at least eliminate half the electricity cost.
Jeff, and then
I think we're micromanaging here, to be honest with you. A couple issues here. One is, as you probably know, we actually installed the level 2 one first. And this one had the charging gear set up, but we couldn't get a transformer for 2 years almost. Jonathan, correct me, getting a transformer. So initially the other one wasn't available, even though all the equipment was there, we couldn't get the transformer. Okay, so a couple issues. One is, how are we charging? And maybe it's been answered. It's a little, I couldn't hear Amelia that well. We're charging town. We didn't have EVs in our town vehicle fleet 2 years ago either, or 2.5 years ago. So first question is at a strategic level, how are we planning to charge town vehicles? Okay. I know, let me ask a couple high level questions. That's one thing. And if you look at the revenue going up and down, I think that's partly because we don't get revenue from town vehicles. Okay. So that's one issue. The second issue is, we have two chargers. What if the transformer goes on the level 2.1? Then how are we charging town vehicles, other vehicles? We have no redundancy if we lose one charger in town. How are we now going to be charging not only the public's vehicles, but there's a cost of having redundancy so that you don't lose a capability also. If you think of backup generators in a building or anything else. So I think we should let them worry, the sustainability committee and Amelia worry about how to work the pricing, but I think we need to look at the strategic issues of how we charge town vehicles and what level of reliability and redundancy we need for charging stations to support the town.
Oh, it could be others. I'll start up.
So I've sat through a lot of meetings in which communities talk about what the right price is to sell various services. And the limiting factor isn't about meeting our costs. Our limiting factor is the competition. In other words, if even our police vehicles can recharge for 10 cents for a full load at Sherborn Market, doesn't matter whether we are recovering our costs or not recovering our costs, they're not going to use our facility. So the price is ultimately determined not by covering our costs, but what is the market? So that leads me to the suggestion that was made in this report that there be the ability to change the pricing delegated to the committee or to some manager. So as the prices go up or down, if you go to a gas station, almost every day the price is different, depending on shipments, market, all that kind of stuff. I don't, in all due respect to the notion that we should recover our costs, indeed we should recover our costs, but hopefully we can recover our costs and then have this area above our costs where the market fluctuates. But it may well be that the market is fluctuating before we get to fully recovering our costs. And so we need to start with some method of knowing what is the market.
The market prices, when you go on plug share and look around this area, and it's not all there, they can fluctuate for the most part. Last Pike seems to have cheaper rates for some reason, like 35 cents. So let's see, we're charging 45 for the fast. And we're suggesting that you go to 50 cents just to be closer. But the market around here, when you look at Wellesley and the Walls and whatever else, it seems to go from around 49. It's on plug share, just this week, just in the latest, 49 to 75 cents a kilowatt hour. So we're in the range there. And so we can go a little higher, see how it goes, and see how demand responds, whether it makes a difference even, or whether you could go even a little bit more if we still need to do it, if we're not getting enough demand. And we need to raise it to cover our operating costs, then we'll do that. It's just something we just monitor.
So do we have a sense for how price sensitive are people who are going for chargers?
So internally, there are two documents that sustainability coordinators have collaborated on putting together. One that's for just a spreadsheet of what local municipalities have said, like what the number of their chargers, their brands, their operating costs, and their tariff. So the rate that they set independent of whatever the charging company wants. And there's also a document that tracks the usage for a couple of the municipalities with more charging stations available so that they can track demand, how it responds to their prices. Between these two documents, both of which influenced the report we gave you tonight, the current consensus kind of is, if you take the average of all of those, the amount that a municipality generally charges is more than a commercial entity charges. which I think makes sense just because of sources of revenue. I put the specific range in there, and we are actually right on the money with one and slightly undercharging with the other. So I think, again, there is a little bit of room to grow, but then that brings the question of fluctuating demand. We, in those couple of municipalities, I don't remember which off the top of my head, I think one of them was Somerville. They observed that there was a slight dip in usage after prices would go up that would eventually recover and continue to grow as more EVs come on the roads. So I think if we did want to run this as a 1-year experiment, we kind of would have to get on changing those prices so that we can have the longest runtime allowable to see if they do recover or change at all. And that's obviously something that we can only accomplish through renewing the software contract to be able to monitor that.
Just thinking practically, I'm wondering how elastic your price options are, because, you know, a lot of this is convenience. People aren't going to drive a long way to save a few pennies per kilowatt hour.
I do.
I mean, you know, I don't have, you know, I probably shouldn't even speak up because I don't have any good sense of what the demand versus the availability is around here. I mean, I think the availability is pretty sparse, actually.
It is, but I'm surprised that the level 3 charger isn't used more by the public to some extent.
I mean, this is where I'm sort
That's
of
what we have
like,
to go find out.
I feel like the market is still a bit of a black box, right? I mean, so I have a plug-in hybrid, so I'm not like a full EV person, but my general understanding is that, I mean, there's almost no way that the electricity is costing more at home than it is at a public charger, except for the ones that are strangely free because somebody is subsidizing them, you know. But essentially, if somebody is charging anywhere close to a reasonable rate publicly, that's going to be higher than what you're paying at home. So people with EVs are most of the time just charging at home, and they're only charging at a public level 3 charger because they're running out of battery and they need to do it. And so generally speaking, their car is pointing them to be, oh, look, there's one over here. Better go there now. And so they're just going to go. And so as long as the price on that charger isn't exorbitantly outside of the general range, they're going to go to it, you know? So that's why I'm like, I don't know that people are going to be like, oh, Sherborn's level 3 is charging 50 cents, but if I drive all the way up to Natick, I might get it at 45. Like, I don't think people are doing that. I think
People are worried about that as opposed to just covering our costs.
right. That's so that I mean, I think it gets to Jeff's point of like we are micromanaging it right now. You guys can micromanage it. That's fine. But you don't have to do it in our presence. I think that we can just give you a general guidance of like, sure, try to work towards covering our costs if you can. That sounds like a great plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, you know, to expand on that, currently, the select board's authority to set the fees. So if you wish to delegate that to a staff person or other, then, you know, you can certainly do that. Just to build on some of the other conversations happening, the revenue that is generated currently that comes into your local receipts. Okay. The expenses are in your town building budget. They're not really all that connected. So, that if you want to offset your cost, this is something on a revolving fund does very well. Yes, you offset the costs and be sustaining. Just a point of reference. Regarding charging town vehicles, the electric bill, town departments that may use it. I guess I'd point to the way that the town currently does gas and diesel. So that's carried in the public works budget for all town vehicles, but we don't assess the cost of that to the police department or to the fire department. It's covered by the town in that budget. You know, the use of every vehicle, you know, the fuel station, you know, the mileage, how much gallons goes to each of the vehicles is fully accountable, but we don't do the allocation of the budget. So it's similar for the electric vehicle where it's covered in town building budget in this case, and the police are using it. And the town's funding that charge, but you would want to net out the use of of that when you're figuring out your rates.
Of course.
I think that's really the gist of it. You just want to net that out. You're not subsidizing the police.
That's what we're doing on the analysis.
Can I add one more point?
Sean's been itching to say something.
But Jeremy just stole one of my suggestions. I'll further that. I would say, A, you guys shouldn't keep doing this. It's been a couple of years since we actually did the level two. I think we kind of said it when we did it, and we followed what the grant told us to do, and it really never came back. I think you guys should delegate that to the town administrator, either quarterly or yearly, whatever. Couldn't be having this much of a discussion about it. We're losing money.
That was-
Should have fixed the bleeding a while ago. Hang on, and one just to finish. It should get out of the town buildings budget. It's totally. I am gonna go sit and go through line by line in the town buildings budget and try to answer to advisory why it's there. It shouldn't be there. We should set up Jeremy and Deb should probably pull it out, put it into the revolving fund. And then the back end is pretty easy to track. You know, the quote fuel for the cruisers, but I think it should be over there. It's much more transparent over there and it's a lot easier to track. Sorry.
Do you know, is it common in other municipalities that have a revolving fund for
I don't know.
EV chargers?
That might be the wrong term too.
Yeah.
It might
Well, it
be.
does make sense because it is an external receipt that.
Some researching back to you.
Absolutely.
All right, we're here, Paul.
So one of the reasons why I made the suggestion about delegating it is because the price of electricity changes. So to the extent that we want to set a goal of covering our costs, I know from working with Eversource, the numbers, the rate set by Eversource will vary considerably over a period of time. And it happens to be higher in the wintertime and less other times of the year. You need to be able to respond to it and not wait for years before that's done. So I'm again repeat the idea of delegating the setting of the price so that it can be set as often as necessary by a staff person. And I don't want to load up Jeremy with more. He's got way more than he has to do. But maybe the sustainability committee, maybe Michael Lessner. I mean, it doesn't to me matter so much who does it, but I think you need to have that flexibility, and it needs to move off our desk. So if we do have the goal, and I think we all agree with the goal of they should be covering the costs, they need to have the flexibility to do that because the costs are going to increase.
Although the cost, let's put it this way, these 5 cents, we talk about raising it like 5 cents or another. That's the utility prices rarely change that much anyway. So in a way, we wouldn't be doing it on that kind of micro level.
And we have aggregation, right, that providing some
Whatever. But in the end, yes, it makes it a little simpler to go do the changes. We've done, I mean, we set the price for the level 3 without coming here. So it's not like we've been hamstrung.
All right, so then can I propose that we?
One more comment.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I want to get one more thing. So I'm very comfortable with the idea of delegating, the price setting authority. Far be it from me to want to micromanage. That's not my intent at all. Very comfortable delegating. My thing really was the principles of one, I think, agreeing with others that really these should be covering costs, as much, to the extent possible. Given that a concern that the level 2 charger from numbers I looked at is never going to get there. And, is that a helpful thing for us to have? Maybe closing one of the ports would help move things in a better direction. But, I just raising the question of, I think that's never going to get there. So as long as we have that, probably never be covering costs. So then I think everyone needs to be comfortable with, the operating budget is going to be supporting the level 2 charger, for some thousands of dollars every year.
for 1,002, we can possibly request subsidized between the level 3 and the level
Yeah,
2
if-
until we decide.
If things are inelastic enough, and at some point, the level 2 is going to get dumped and we're going to get another level 3 at some point.
Hopefully, we can talk.
That what, Sean?
Be up to me to help.
And, yeah, I think that it is right.
So that,
Borderline issue. the
I mean,
level 2.
that's why I raised the question. It feels like we're going to spend $1,300 to lose $2,000. And not that that's a huge amount of money, but
The thousand, it has increased in usage during the period where we lost the $2,000. Therefore, although it's been strangely lumpy,
of course.
but so one would believe that that would be an outlier in terms of the amount, that it should be less than that going forward, and hopefully we'll give it a chance to serve its purpose with doing some adjustments, and yeah, we can decide along the way. Unfortunately, probably that 1280 we're stuck with, even if we get rid of the thing during the year. But if we're not covering the electricity cost alone, then maybe it's worth it to even end it after 6 months or 9 months or something like that. But just make a call.
All right. Can I propose that tonight, one, that we do renew the software for the 1280, two, that we adopt the proposals here of essentially increasing the rates by 5 cents on both chargers, and then that three, we delegate subsequent pricing adjustments to the town administrator in consultation with the sustainability coordinator and the energy and sustainability committee. Does that sound like a reasonable proposal?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that if a decision is made to close one of the ports or to shut down the charger completely, that should probably come back to the select board. But smaller items, I think.
Yeah, I think they're big, like as we wrote that big changes. It's reasonable to come back here,
Yeah.
or just notify you when making changes. In
Yeah.
case something you want to ask questions, it's easy enough to just send a little memo that the town administrator what we're doing. You can decide if you want to intervene.
Yeah, I don't think pulling the port is something we should even consider because, if you think about it, the problem with most of the charging, people are going to all be charging at the same time. They're not here at midnight trying to charge their car, unless it's Saks, but one of those fire events. So if you take a port away, it could actually reduce your revenue significantly because you're probably getting most of your revenue at one time when two cars are charging simultaneously.
Yeah.
We will observe that. We have all the use data.
No, we're not trying to micromanage it, but I don't think there's any sense to get rid of a port. What's that going to do?
It greatly reduces costs because when
Yeah.
both
It cuts off.
when both ports are used, costs skyrocket.
Well,
So that's what it does.
we get zero revenue, much less revenue. So I
It's
don't
not
know.
what, the question is, that's not a correct assumption. It is very rarely are two cars using that. It's
Well,
like once or twice.
But I mean, you guys can figure this out.
Yeah.
We don't need
I'm
to
just saying that those are.
sort this out for you.
True.
I will say that I can only charge my car at one of the ports because the two parking spaces are offset, and then because
I think we looked at the whole port kind of messily, if that was the case.
okay. So does that proposal that I made sound okay? All right, we'll call that a motion.
yeah, I'll second the motion.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor? All right. All
You
right.
may find the library has lower volume of book removals because no one's waiting for their car to charge for 2 hours all of a sudden. But
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. What are we on here? All right. 1 minute review of draft operating budget.
thanks, Amelia.
All right.
Thanks, Michael.
Ready? Yeah. So this past weekend, I put together in concert with Deb, put together a roll-up budget of all of the submitted budget by all budget makers for 2027. For the budget for the next fiscal year. And I mentioned before the holiday break that when we get back to the new year that we have to roll up our sleeves. We were starting to roll up our sleeves. So the budget memo was distributed along with the budget rollout to all of you as a select board. It's been distributed to the advisory. We'll also make sure that it is posted on the website. It was also distributed to the school administration. And actually, Deb and I have a meeting with John and Beth tomorrow afternoon to talk about several things, but we'll make sure that they understand what's in that and can go through it with them. But what I thought I'd do tonight was to give you a summary, excerpts in summary form from the budget rollout, similar to what we've done in prior years, but there will be a little bit of a difference in this that you'll see from prior years. So here is the summary of the submitted budgets in rollout form. You've got the three major components of the town budget: schools, or education, town government, and the undistributed expenses. The school committees have submitted their version 1 school budgets for the local elementary school and the regional school, and we have estimates of cost for Tri-County, Norfolk Agricultural, and Minuteman. All of those trade schools are suggesting a 5% increase over their prior year cost. That the Tri-County cost already includes the debt cost that was included last year. I did have a tour of Tri-County in the building this past Tuesday. That showed me how things were being constructed. It was a great tour, really fun. Drove around a buggy around the site, went through the building, looked at the building. The shell is all there. They're on schedule. They're not way ahead. They're not way behind. They're right on schedule. They're on budget despite having some issues with tariffs for steel. The project, unfortunately, had to spend about $2 million in tariffs because of steel issues. So the steel was manufactured in the United States, but it had to go to Canada. Some of the manufacturing of it, when it was coming back in the United States, it was about tariffs. They have lobbied and exhausted their options with the Commonwealth and the federal government. So fortunately, their budget did include contingencies. The $2 million was covered by. So, in any event, back to your budget. The regional schools and the local schools, you'll note there's a negative there for the elementary school. That's due to an accounting change proposed by the school community as a result of DESI guidance. That's shifting the out-of-district special ed costs from the local school to the region. So in reality, the local elementary school's budget has an increase proposed currently in the version 1 of 4.43% increase in their budget. Out-of-district costs are shifted from the local school to the regional school and increased. There's actually a 62% increase in the out-of-district costs, going from $694,000 in FY26 to $1.1 million in FY27. Those costs have been shifted to the regional school and will be carried in that assessment. But the net of the out-of-district costs regarding regardless of that shift, the net is the regional school assessment for Sherborn is up 6.2%. And like I mentioned, the local school budget is up 4.43%. And then there's an increase also in the out-of-district costs.
Ask a quick question, Terry. Is that just out of district or is it all sped?
It's all out of district sped.
Okay, so all the in-district services will stay with Pine Hill.
Correct.
In not out of
If
district.
it's in district, it would stay in the
Yeah.
representative budget.
Okay.
But that's at the high level. I'm sure the school committees and the advisor get into more detail on that. Moving down to the town government and aggregate town government budgets as submitted have a 7.85% increase on undistributed expenses, budget lines, the health insurance, which has been a topic of conversation. There is that 15% increase to the premiums, health insurance for employees and retirees. The other large item in that budget is the county retirement assessment. That's something that we're given from Middlesex County Retirement Board. The assessment for FY 27 is up 8.44%. That service reflects the projects that were approved at last town meeting. All of that rolls up to a total budget increase of 7.5%. In comparison to what was approved at town meeting for FY 26, the current budget year, that increase over FY 25 was 3.5%. So, as submitted currently, this budget is twice as much as the increase that you had going into FY 26.
For one thing, we're paying for Holbrook now.
Yeah.
That's a big
I'll
piece
get
of
to
that.
We're not even paying the full thing yet. It's already clear.
Yeah. So that was the sort of roll up of the overall expenses. Here's a roll up of your overall revenue. You have expenses, you have to offset that with revenue to cover the costs. As you know, in Sherborn, 90% of that comes from the property tax levy. As presented to cover the cost of the increase, that total budget increase of about $2.5 million year over year. If this budget was adopted, the property tax levy would need to increase about 7.4% to cover the costs in this draft budget. So on average, someone's tax bill would go up about 7%. So here's that calculation that we've gone through before, how Prop 2.5 works. This is a slide that will be different than you've seen in prior years. We've talked about the levy limit and how that's calculated based on the prior year's levy limit. Then you've added 2.5% increase, you add new growth, you come up with a new levy limit. You add in debt exclusions that have been approved for capital, and you come up with your maximum allowable. So that is the limit that you can utilize for revenue before you would need to go to an operating override. And that is the difference here that we haven't seen in the prior years because I've been helping you with budgets. You'll note that the maximum allowable levy is less than what is required to fund the budgets as presented. So that means there is a budget deficit. This budget is not balanced in that you're not able to fund this budget within the levy as limited by Prop 2.5. So to fund this budget, you would use all of your excess levy capacity. That would be zero, and you would need the town would need to approve an override. First, the select board would need to entertain an override. Town meeting would need to approve an override, and then that would need to go to ballot for override to raise that budget deficit, which is about $660,000 in budget deficit.
Has another question?
Sure.
So have you had the discussion with the regional school committee yet about the level of the excessive deficiency? Because right now we're not going to micromanage in any of these budget categories, but the excessive deficiency can't go above 5%, but they've had it around 4% before. It could go down to 3%.
It's currently less than 5%. It was actually just certified, and I'm happy to send that around to you folks. We're copied on that, but it is currently less than 5%.
Yeah, so they could.
But it's in the 3s, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm not sure how that may or may not help with the overall.
It's a macro factor that I think they can have some flexibility on, I would think.
But no, I haven't.
Yeah.
Talked to.
No, it's early.
But I think they have to keep it between 3 and 5, and I think it's close to 3 right now.
Yeah.
Historically, they've always had it floating right around 5, and it's always like you're sitting on a bunch of money. But
yeah,
I mean, part of it is also in terms of policy, tapping into E&D to cover your operating budget is kind of the same as if you were to use free cash to supplement our operating budget, which is a big no-no. So.
But their budget is, if you take the 300 and the 1.8 million, their budget is 1.5 million above last year's budget, roughly, or 1.45 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Because you net out the Pine Hill and the regional school and their.
Yeah. But I think part of the issue with the schools though is that a pretty large chunk of their budget increase is because of those out of district placements, which isn't really their operating budget. That's a windfall basically. They're not like, oh, look, we planned out to do this thing and oops, we're charging you another.
No, I know. So you could have someone move into town. I mean, out of district students could be, $300,000 a year.
Yep.
One student.
Yep.
Yeah.
If they're going to the landmark school or some place like that.
Yeah. So again, I think that I know that the school's position is going to be that it's not like they're running a fat budget, that's the reason why our budget's gone up. It's like and another thing that happened also, what's been happening in the past several years is that the percentage of Sherborn students at the region has been going up. So again, even with a level operating budget, our assessment is going up simply because we're sending more students there. And, again, has nothing to do with their budgeting decisions. It's just the way it is, and it's just multiple things are conspiring to make it more expensive for us. Essentially.
There's not much wiggle room. I recall last year that the school budget 2.0, quite a bit lower than 1.0. Do you expect that could be the case this year?
That's a good question.
That's a great question, and that generally comes early February timeframe.
Yeah, I think there's going to be an amount of wait and see. But sorry, we've interrupted you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I welcome the conversation. Please.
I think, Jeff, on E&D, I think the region had some things happen a year ago where they used a bunch of E&D to cover unexpected costs, which brought the E&D down. So that,
So you're saying it's 3% now? Not
I don't remember the number,
I don't know
but
the
I think
exact number,
it's
but
at the lower end of the range.
It is
It had been at the higher end of the range for a long time. And now
we're
it's
seeing
not.
costs can also have swings. If one year, for some reason, even operating costs is high, it can be a stabilizing force. Or it can be an unforeseen capital expenditure.
Steve, what's the timeline for likely settling the teacher's contract or unknown? Unknowable at this point.
Unknown at this point. We yesterday was supposed to be our third bargaining session, which was going to be the last one where new items could be brought up. But in December, there were a couple of delays. So actually, our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks from now, will be our third bargaining session. And so we don't even know what all of their asks are yet.
Okay.
So it's going to be a couple months. I mean, we scheduled it out into April. So
the key thing about the school budget is what on a state aid is going to happen. That isn't going to get set, unfortunately, until June or July. Just the way the process unfolds, and our town meeting is typically before then. And in the past, I've known advisory to be very cautious on that number and not accept suggestions from people like myself where I thought it would end up. And even though I was right where it ought to end up, overtax because your town meeting is at a time where you don't know and you don't want to be cut short. So you end up appropriating more money than you actually end up needing.
They also have the complication this year that I believe the state reimbursements are out of district lag year. So with a big increase in out of district, that will generate some support a year later.
Mm-hmm.
That's another challenge for them.
Overall, though, I mean, this is a great summary, but it's kind of depressing. I mean, it's so hard to find wiggle room here. There are many of these costs we have no control over, like health insurance.
Well, I want to make it plain that I don't support a general operating override. And we want to look very carefully at every cost and defer some items if, even though they are desirable, I'd put them off a year or do whatever it takes to spare our residents from a general operating override of 7.4%. That should be quite a significant amount of money for people.
I mean, I will say as a counterpoint though, that deferring something that's necessary isn't going to help anything because my read on the situation is that we may scratch and claw our way under the levy limit this year to avoid an override, but it is an absolute inevitability that next year there's going to be an override. There's simply no way unless something extremely dramatic happens with inflation over the next year, which seems unlikely. It's simply not possible. So all we're doing is delaying the inevitable. So if you defer something, you're just going to make next year that much worse.
And channeling Jeff, if we defer certain building, repairs, it's more expensive.
Well, like I mentioned, the Holbrook thing, we were getting 200 grand a year or whatever it was free from Holbrook, but we got the state prompted it. Now that could go down if they get more towns to subscribe to the Holbrook Center. The per town cost could go down eventually.
There are communities interested in joining.
There are, I know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're near at capacity. But there is an opportunity in that your contract, the IMA that you have with Holbrook, has one year left. So they're going into the later spring and summer. We will need to start negotiating the new IMA with Holbrook, which will reset that assessment possibly based on what current operating expenses they have in member communities. So right now, you're bound by the terms of the IMA that require this budget FY27 to carry an additional $160 some odd thousand that is included in the roll-up that I'm presenting. But this year, you may have an opportunity to negotiate something slightly different from Holbrook if you choose to stay with that service.
Yeah, are there other regional centers that we might want to?
There are others, and that's a whole process if you want to switch. But this will be a topic of conversation for you folks
later
in the coming year.
The other thing I want to mention is that we did start a program to try and reset the health insurance.
Yeah.
And the last time we did it, that did level the increases that we were seeing for a while. Not long term, as Steve is just saying. But it did for a year or two keep things relatively stable. And that could pay dividends for us now if we're able to get that done in time for this budget.
It is certainly timely for that to happen. So, and I think, as we've talked about during that discussion, it essentially would reset lower the health insurance costs, but that year-over-year increase is likely to remain the same. So, getting back to just to point out that $660,000 in shortfall that would be funded by an override should the town choose that is representative of about a 1.7% decrease in budgets as they're currently proposed. So to put it in context, and to Stephen's point, you're likely claw back 1.7% to get by without an override in FY27, but it's knocking on your doorstep. And this slide kind of helps show that graphically, where your excess levy capacity had at the peak in FY22 and had been dropping steadily since. And we made the slope a little less steep going into FY26, but as you can see, as currently proposed in FY27, it drops to zero really rapidly, and essentially goes negative. Though you can't have negative excess levy capacity. That's your budget deficit that we're talking about. But without an override, you're governed by the terms of Prop 2.5, which is 2.5% plus new growth for Sherborn. That is about $980,000 per year that you could have your budgets increase without an operating override. As currently proposed, this budget is a $2.5 billion increase year over year.
I mean, this chart really nicely illustrates the broader point that the the pressures that are bringing us towards, if not this year, next year, the likelihood of needing to think hard about an override is, our excess levy capacity started to go down just about the time inflation started to pick up. Proposition 2.5, not indexed for inflation in any way. So with a period of years of high inflation, higher wage increases, it was inevitable that we were going to end up in this situation. And, maybe down the road, the state will make some adjustments to Prop 2.5 to give municipalities a little bit more flexibility. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But this is just an inevitable consequence of the broader macroeconomic environment that we find ourselves in as compared to some, mismanagement of town
The problem with
finances.
this is whatever it is, a 7-year, 6-year span, you see, we're gonna have potentially, 180 units coming online on Cooling Street in 5 years, I think 4 years, something like that. So if you look what this looked like in 2017, then we had new developments come on. So
Sure.
it's at a higher level, I think we'll have a lot more tax revenue.
That absolutely helps, but
Yeah.
the chart here is just a reflection of the
No.
macroeconomic environment that we and every other town in the Commonwealth is facing.
Yeah, but it's part of because we're, a small town, all your costs are shared over a much smaller
Of course.
revenue base.
Of
So
course.
if we add 200 units of housing or 100, so you can tell us how many, that's a huge.
In 4 or 5 years, that could be
It's a
really
big deal.
really,
So I
really
think
helpful.
that's part of the picture at a more
Yeah.
macro level.
I mean, our new growth numbers over this time period have been pretty low. There
know.
hasn't been a lot of development in
Yeah.
town, and that speaks to your point.
Yeah.
Just two other positive things to say. One is that there is this Municipal Empowerment Act that is wending its way through the legislature, and that the MMA is very much in favor of it. And that has some additional revenue sources that are identified in there, which would be outside of the property tax and would provide additional revenue. We'd have to put that on the warrant for the town meeting and all that kind of stuff. And maybe the voters will say no to that. But I think it would work. And the last point is that I have sat through almost annually discussions just like this, that always start off just like Jeremy started off. Oh, we're going to be losing money. We're going to have to find a way to raise money. I've seen descriptions of projected deficits in the $3 million range and $5 million range and $12 million range, all of that at this point in the year. And somehow all these communities figure out a way to make it work. And somehow in this community, we've figured out ways to make it work. And it's not a direct one-on-one, the analysis that the inside presented, which is if you defer an expense, it's going to be more expensive next year. Because there are ways that you don't incur the expense, or that you get a grant for that expense, or that other events happen that lead you in different directions. For example, one of my communities has got this grant to replace the school roofs. And I noticed that on our capital program, there's an issue of school roof. And it's in the on-site, insight analysis and all that kind of stuff. But this other community, they're paying nothing for their school roof. And I'm mentioning that because a year from now, it's not a one-to-one that will be in exactly the same situation. There will be changes, there'll be differences, there'll be all kinds of other things happening. So it's not all black and gloomy. Somehow it will work out.
Yeah, I hope so, and I'm here to help you do that.
Of all the towns in Massachusetts, of the small towns in Massachusetts, how many of them do an override regularly? Quite a few, I
It
think.
really varies. I mean, there are a number of communities that are at the levy limit. They've been at the levy limit for years, and that's the way they operate. There are other communities that are not, that get the levy limit and then fall off of it, get back on it. It's really, it varies by community.
Jeremy, my impression is, tell me if this is right, that with the high inflation of recent years, there have been a number of towns that weren't at the levy limit that in last 3-4 years
Yes,
have found themselves at the levy limit, at their levy limit and needing to
Right.
confront either doing an override or not.
Correct. I mean, just your neighbors in Native had an override
Franklin,
recently, which
Franklin just
generally had
done
voted down an override. Native, for instance, Franklin. Medfield has been at the levy limit for years. They have an issue where they've limited all department budgets to a 1% increase for FY 27, and that's still not working. So I think many communities are feeling more pressures more now than they have. So yes, I'm optimistic that you'll be able to work something out in the short term. You've got some headwinds. You've seen this before. The proposed FY 27 budget is similar in many as far as who gets what share of the pie. As prior years, there's no significant change here. A little bit more detail as far as the expense summaries and what it proposed. Just wanted to point out here that and that shows the aggregate of the increase in the school budgets. The aggregate is up 7.32%. Town government's 7.85. I sent around earlier a request from the advisory committee of last night to revisit the level funded legal budget that falls in town government grouping up there. So food for thought there, how you all may want us to respond to the advisory committee's request to increase the funding for the legal budget from 80,000 to something.
So I have a thought
So
on that.
even knowing the budget situation, they still want us to increase the.
That is correct. That was what they would ask me to relay.
Of course, in fact, we overspend it. We overspend every time, up to 200%.
So can I comment on this?
Briefly, I think I already know what you're going to say since you say it every time it comes up. So we all already know. So say it quickly, please.
Well, number one, I think we need to treat legal like it was snow and ice, and budget low, and use that as a tool to drive down the expenditure. Because when a board or committee comes and says, "Hey, I want town council to look at what will it cost to send a man to the moon," or something like that, you say, "Hey, we don't have the budget for it." So you give the town administrator the tools to say no to legal expenditures. The second part is that what advisory is proposing is a little bit of a game, because they want to increase the legal but reduce the reserve fund. So it's a net zero. But the problem with reducing the reserve fund is the reserve fund is flexible so that we can use it in all kinds of situations. If you put money into the legal, it's not in the reserve fund, so it's not there for the broken boiler that needs an emergency to be dealt with and so on. So if anything, you want to reduce your legal budget, increase your reserve. That way you have the money, but you also have the ability to use it on things other than legal.
Yeah, the rationale for limiting legal expenses in the budget is to make us think twice before we call town
Well,
council.
there's only two budgets. He's talking, only two budgets you could overspend. One is legal and the other is snow plowing. They're the only two that they realize you're pretty much not able to control, because it could be a year where you're negotiating a union contract, or you're negotiating how many legal bills we had for the library forever. But,
Yeah,
then
but
you
still,
have no snow plowing for warm weather winters.
So that is, that was, Paul touched on that. The other request of the advisory was to reduce the reserve fund. I actually have a question for folks that, from your experience, who in Sherborn owns the reserve fund budget?
In my time,
Sounds
it's
like
all-
a silly budget. That's a silly question, but
In my time, it's always been advisory. Advisory simply sets the reserve fund. That was one of the few things that advisory had full dominion over.
Both in terms of spending and setting the
yeah,
number.
setting the budget.
Yeah,
So each,
because every budget season there was always a discussion of what should we set the reserve fund.
So in my time, it was more ambiguous with who was doing that.
Mhm. I think it's because I never changed it, and so I generated this habit of basically
Well, the only thing
Funds
is,
is always
the
making
reserve
300.
fund transfer requires both the select board and advisory.
Only advisory.
No.
It's only advisory.
Yeah, no, I
Who's the select board do-
Year-end transfers do, but the reserve fund is
Yeah.
only.
I mean, customarily, the select board has always voted, but if you look at the bylaw where it's written,
It's just advisory.
it's just the advisory.
It gets a little muddled at year end when we do year-end transfers because we have to vote on that as well. I was going to just chime in on the advisory things. So I think the reserve fund should be 300. I think reducing it below that just puts us at risk of something bad happening and we just don't have the resources to manage it without having a special town meeting or some other thing. So I wouldn't support that. I think what they're up to on the legal budget is we budget 80. Last 5 years, we spent an average of, I think, about 200K. And I think
But
There-
we're in litigation.
of course.
Litigation.
And I don't think they're thinking anything like it should go to 200, but that maybe something a bit higher than 80 would be a little more realistic. So I think that's what they're, I think that's what they're,
Ask this question every year.
Yeah.
Town meeting.
yeah. But I think that's the
I would
motivation.
support you on the reserve fund. I don't think we should change that, but we could give someone a legal
I mean,
fee.
it could go to 100%.
I mean, my understanding with the legal budget though is that where we budgeted is effectively the retainer that we pay to town council, right? And then anything that is
Was that?
is that not accurate?
That's our,
Like I said originally,
it could be a method.
Yeah. But essentially the idea being that, well, we know we're gonna pay town council this much, but you know, who knows what legal issues will come up, maybe none.
and with their-
But at the end of the day, to me, it's just that, again, we are legally allowed to overspend it because it is an unpredictable line item, right? That you can't simply say, we know what the coming year is going to bring, and so therefore we're going to budget this amount for it. Just like a particular year may have very little snow. Furthermore, it is a method by which we can keep the tax levy very slightly lower, because when that excess gets covered at town meeting, it comes out of free cash, not a tax levy. So to me, again, I'm always looking for ways in which something that the town needs to pay for can be paid for outside of the tax levy. You know, that's essentially the reason why I was in favor of CPA. That's, why I'm in favor of using stabilization funds, in favor of utilizing free cash in, ways that are fiscally sound strategically, but, which help to reduce the tax levy.
Plus the legal fees, I think, for the school or like teacher negotiations are in the school budget, right? They're not in our legal budget.
Right, they're in the school budget.
They're in the regional school budget.
Yeah.
And isn't this a contract year? Or
Oh, yeah.
Just, yeah, so
I'm
that's,
in the negotiations.
I know. So that's in the, it will be some in next year's budget or is it mainly?
No, because the
To be
legal
completed.
counsel for the negotiation is there, that's retained by the region.
Yeah, okay.
but if we say budget 80,000 or 100,000 for legal fees, it's not like we're obliged to pay.
No, but we're
All the
taxing,
fees.
for money that we
You
might not
whatever
use.
you budget, you need to levy.
Oh, sure, but it's not a retainer, is what I'm saying. I mean,
Oh, no, that's
we're not
separate. The
obliged to
container
use that
No.
all our time council. So, yeah,
Separate from the budget.
so,
You set the tax rate based on planning to use.
oh, of course, yeah. But I was just, clarifying that we Petrini and Son, they're listening, are not on a retainer. They're not guaranteed
Well,
the
you-
80,000 a
you-
year.
The town has a contract.
Yeah.
So that,
In fact,
that sets the terms of what they get paid, not the budget.
I thought there was a
Right,
retainer.
right, whatever
There
that
is.
is. Yeah,
What, do you know what the amount is of the retainer?
I do, but I'd rather not say out loud.
Okay.
yeah.
Just one more point on this slide here. Just wanted to, even though there's pretty large increase shown there for town government, that does include that emergency dispatch increase cost,
Mhm.
168,000. And we are currently carrying an increase in the town building budget of $200,000 based on the study that was presented to you at the prior meeting. But minus those, if you take those two numbers out, then the town government increase is only 3.63%, which is very much in line with what the increase was in 2026. So those two budget lines really drive the government, town government departments.
The problem with taking the buildings part out is that we're not maintaining the buildings and we're have capital costs 2 years from now. because the board's-
All you do is you transfer it to a debt exclusion rather than a operating override. Operating override is permanent. The debt exclusion, you borrow the money,
Yeah, that's
you
true.
pay the money back,
Yeah.
then it's gone, it's off the books.
But you might spend more money
You need
in.
$200,000 every year. If you put it in a levy and an operating override, you won't be paying interest. Borrow.
But you don't have to borrow it either, just the authorization.
Yeah, but you might pay more for
levy,
assets.
It's just like an override operating override if you levy it by way of but you're right, it's not permanent. It'll go away.
It's just my experience in this community and in other communities is that it's harder to sell a permanent tax increase. They will go on and on and on, even for future generations, than it is to tell people, hey, it's going to be gone you buy a new police cruiser, it's going to be gone in 5 years.
The fine equipment is our building example where if you don't maintain, you're going to spend $1 million for new chillers rather than spending, $10,000 a year to maintain them. There's some money you can spend on an operating budget that will make the asset last longer.
Yes,
You end up spending way less money.
but you can also borrow that. You can borrow $10,000.
How would you do that if it's an operating cost? That's not an
It's
asset.
necessarily, it depends on how you characterize it. If you're painting it a different color, yeah, that's maintenance, but I don't know enough about
Yeah.
chillers, whatever you mentioned.
Well, that's an example.
What kind of maintenance they need, but you can easily get an engineer to tell you, no, this is a long-term increase that's gonna, fix this problem for 10, 15 years, and then you can
Yeah, Offsite Insight did that.
Yeah, I think Sean will be bringing back the select board budgets, so you discuss in detail. This slide just shows some of the highlights of the high points of what's the budget drivers for the town government salary lines, there's the COLA increase and various other ones. I'm not gonna get into detail on those tonight. I just wanted to show you some of those, but we will be distributing to all of you the traditional select board budgets that you'll get in detail. And we'll queue them up at a subsequent meeting for you to get into more depth on. I think that town building budget will require some more conversation. So and just more to come. We don't get to it tonight. This next slide is the budget drivers on the expense side. We really touched on, those two ones at the top. Some of the other drivers for the expenses in the town budget are there. But again, we'll get into those more detail at a later meeting. I did want to show you this slide in that beyond the capital budget and the operating budget, town meeting votes the use of free cash. And traditionally you funded, the OPEB trust from free cash and a contribution from the operating budget. So $100,000 in free cash and $100,000 from the operating budget. That is an area you might want to consider from a financial perspective. Do you want to continue to fund $200,000? Could you fund something different, or $200,000 from free cash and nothing from the operating budget? Something different than $100,000 from free cash. In any event, that's an area in the operating budget that you could change. Looking at the fund balance available in the OPEB trust, is it progressing the way you'd like? You have enough, too much for where you want to be? Is some relief from the operating budget actually is that $100,000 contribution from the operating budget?
I know every year we get a report from a consultant regarding those.
Every other year.
Oh,
So we had one last year.
Mhm.
It's seven is budgeted to do the OPEB. We sure we have one that's done. It shows that the town is doing well, right, towards contributing towards its OPEB liabilities.
Yeah. But my recollection was essentially the recommendation or the general consensus at the time was to simply continue doing what we were doing.
Yes, correct. Again, it's something to consider. It's some area that
Can you refresh my recollection as to what the free cash was?
came back similar to prior year with 3.1 million certified cash available.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, we should start utilizing it.
And currently the capital budget is proposing to use 678,000 of that. And the rest borrowed. The next slide is capital. So we'll get into more of that in a second, but
Sped stabilization is only at 68,000.
correct. So that there is money in it that hasn't been contributed to for a while. It was drawn from 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. And Elder Housing has a stabilization fund as well that hasn't been contributed to for some time, but those balances are as of the end of November. They're slightly more across the board.
And another question would be, do we want to be contributing into capital stabilization this year, or should we actually be withdrawing from it?
Good question. Those are some
I mean,
policy
it's
decisions to be made.
$500,000 there.
You've built up a fair balance there. $500,000 capital stabilization. Is it time to start tapping that?
Yeah, because we're
If you
unstable.
want to start tapping it, or if not contribute and use free cash, more free cash, and not contribute to capital stabilization.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
The same thing, right?
I think they're linked to the on-site inside report. In other words, we had a capital stabilization mainly because it was sort of unpredictable because we weren't maintaining anything.
Yeah.
So if we do the on-site insight where we're replacing things or maintaining them better, we won't have equipment fail before its useful life. You know what I mean? The capital stabilization was sort of a pride, so it kept
Yeah.
things going when
I mean,
we had unexpected.
The issue with capital stabilization is that I think most municipalities that have a capital stabilization fund also have some sort of identified ongoing revenue stream that's going into it.
Yes,
We don't.
right.
All of that, I believe, has come from free cash. We're just moving money from one account
I
to
just
another
think
account.
if we're managing the capital better, it might be not needed as much, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'll get to the capital projects on one side. One thing to note here, another source of funds that became available, actually the free cash will be larger as a result of the Board of Assessors voted this week to release some overlay, release $300,000 of overlay. So that will roll free cash July 1st. So your free cash available is really 3.4 million with that overlay release. So more funding available for capital or other.
So we can't utilize that 300 at this town meeting. It's just a matter of. Oh, we can.
Because it's
Available for FY27.
Oh, okay. Great, great.
Yeah, you said they voted, right?
They did vote
Yeah,
it.
that's the trigger, yeah.
They voted. Which, and it still leaves a fair balance. So that was actually a conservative release, so they're comfortable. They have still available in overlay.
Yeah, that was all physical utilities thing.
Right.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, I think free cash is going to be a theme of this year's budgeting.
Related to free cash, here's the current capital request for FY 27. You saw a summary previously, but wanted to highlight a couple changes since then. And also in the context of the operating budget, one of it, because highlight the Pine Hill water supply tank had been previously shown at $300,000. Unfortunately, that's not down up to $500,000. Engineer's estimate. The police vehicles have gone down from 80,000 to 75,000 for one vehicle replacement. In the
Same spec.
Same spec, just a more refined vendor estimate. And the lifts at Woodhaven are being deferred. They're not needed, so that's being removed, that $100,000. So here's the new alley with the currently shown funding source down there at the bottom. Over 3 million borrowed, exempt borrowed, free cash usage, and then you'll see the question mark there for input as far as other sources to use, as we just talked about.
Wait, have you indicated which of these items are to be from cash?
It's not shown clearly on the
Okay,
table, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
But generally the smaller number,
Right.
One for maybe cash and larger borrowing.
So that water tank is potentially an MSBA funded item.
And if that's the case, then yeah.
Because they have a new repair program. They now have gotten the Jeff Waldron religion about if you actually maintain the schools, you don't have to replace them. So they have like divided up their.
So the Pine Hill School is a town of Sherborn asset. That's owned by the town of Sherborn. Covered under your insurance. It's your deed. It's not owned by the regional schools. So
Because there's
the
38
destiny of
old
that
tank.
school is
Or something like that.
ultimately up to you.
Jeremy, how much specificity is there at this point on the town facilities and infrastructure, the 1.1 million?
Based on the recommendations from the study. So that number, on-site insight, and plus the $200,000 in the operating budget come to what they're recommending.
And is that, and so is that attached to specific projects?
It is. It's mostly related to the shell of town hall, the roof and the exterior, but there's some other things in there as well that Sean will be better to speak to, but it's related to projects, yes. That number could certainly work on.
Yes.
Yes.
Could be mentioned.
Purview.
Right. But we'll get into these.
Yeah.
Yes, Steve probably will bring the capital request to you as well. With that, I'm done. Unless you have any more questions.
Well,
Do we need to make a decision, vote, whatever, on advisories requests of us?
Up to you. That might help with giving them your preference, your guys. I mean, I think there's at least one member of advisory on, and we'll help relay your discussions. But if you made a vote, that is something to relay.
and their reasoning is simply we always spend more than that, so
Yeah.
why isn't it budgeted, right?
Yeah, on legal, in essence, yes.
Yeah.
Make it a little more accountable.
Yeah, we had this discussion literally every single year,
Every
advisory,
year.
yeah, literally every year, on both legal and snow and ice. And I swung from one side to the other, and I am firmly on the, no, we should budget as little as possible on both of them. Because of the fact that it reduces the tax levy and you can utilize that free cash to pay for it.
On the legal, again, I don't think they're looking for the 80 to go to 200. They're looking for the 80 to go to, 100 or 125 or something.
Yeah, but I mean, what does that even do?
I think they're just thinking, more transparent if it's closer, somewhat closer to the actual number. I think that's the explanation I heard.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like, what does transparency mean in that case, right? Because it's not like we already have a plan for how we're going to be using that legal budget in
Yeah.
August and in December, and that we're simply not telling you. I don't know what's going to happen in December.
I think the transparency argument would be something along the lines of, if what's presented in the budget is 80,000, that suggests to people in town meeting that, that's our legal budget. That's what we're going to spend. And people don't necessarily understand that, well, actually, we're probably going to spend something more like 175 or 200. And so I think they're interested in finding a way to try to communicate that legal expenses are higher than 80,000 every year. I think, again, from the explanations I've heard from their meeting last night, I think that's what they're up to.
Right. Every time this comes up, though, the counter argument is, if the money is budgeted, it's going to get spent no matter what. And if it's not budgeted, you think about it twice. Do you really need to call town council? Or can you get that information somewhere?
Though I don't think we get to a point in the year where we said, well, we spent 80,000. From this point forward, we need to all think really hard about using town council.
No, it's just kind of a general.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think if advisory wants transparency, then advisory can include that in their advisory report.
Sure.
They can explain the situation. They can explain why we are choosing not to increase your taxes because we have the ability to not do so. And they can transparently explain how the legal budget works.
I agree with Steve.
Yeah, I do
Then
too.
we'll get sued because we didn't plow the roads.
Just to be clear, I don't disagree with that. I'm just trying to communicate what, my understanding, the reports I heard from last night's meeting. I'm just trying to convey what, I heard about last night, what I heard about last night's
I
meeting.
understand their thinking.
Yeah. No, I think for me, it's philosophically, it's the evolution of from the beginning of my time on advisory of everything should be fully transparent.
Yeah.
Everybody should budget appropriately.
Exactly.
To near the end of advisory, but more like beginning of select board, trying to figure out, okay, there's a reality of running the town and it's going to cost a certain amount of money. And we need to find ways to reduce the amount that the residents are taxed in order to operate this town. And there are several reasonable ways that they're all pretty minor. like like $100,000 is like, I mean, it's not nothing, but it's a couple pennies on the tax rate, so they're small, but all these little things do add up, and you're definitely at a point where a couple pennies makes a significant difference, especially considering that we are almost $700,000. We are budgeted for almost $700,000 over the levy limit right now, and I don't see how adding another $20,000 or $50,000 to that helps anything at all. It's so performative and it's just pointless. Again, if you want transparency, explain it to the people, advise them in the report why we're choosing it to do it this way in order to save their taxes.
I mean, I'm fine
there
with
was
that.
no, just to pipe in, since you there was no vote. It was just discussed. The chair brought that up, really. So just to let you know, it wasn't like there was a consensus. It was just a discussion point. I think.
And I'll let you know, Nora, when I was in my first and second year on advisory, I was in the exact same spot that Stephen Bonder is in.
Me too.
Why are we sitting here budgeting 80,000 when we know it's going to be 170? Like, well, that's so stupid.
And Steve, as you know, so Steve, I will just say,
Don't worry.
I was for CPA, and I'm, I have to say that I'm kind of, having been on this now, this is my fourth year, on the side of, I get the reasoning and the rationale, I should say, for the 80K. I get that. So I understand that. It was just a discussion. That's all.
Thanks, Nora.
Yeah.
And I'm actually a little ambivalent about the reserve fund. I'm like, look, I know it feels bad cutting the reserve fund to 150, but we haven't needed the reserve fund really for many, many years.
Here's the,
Here's the bad
Actually,
scenario.
we spent the.
Yeah. Oh, no, go ahead.
No,
I was just, here's the bad scenario. It's 150. October, something happens to one of the pieces of fire equipment. They need 50,000. December comes, turn on the heat. One of the boilers or something with the heating system in town hall dies. There's only 100,000 in the reserve fund. It's going to take 120,000 to fix. Special town meeting to get the extra money. I mean, it seems to me it's pretty inexpensive insurance. I mean, this discussion came up during my time on advisory, and I had a similar evolution where I once thought we never spend the money. Do we really need to budget it? We can get the tax levy down. And then I was persuaded that it's pretty inexpensive insurance against probably not going to happen. We hope it doesn't happen. It's like when I, write the check for our home insurance bill, I'm really happy in the year that we don't ever have a claim. That's a great year.
Yeah.
But it just seems like inexpensive insurance.
Yeah.
Plus, I'll add one thing to that is we've been using 300,000 for a long time when our budget in aggregate was a much lower number. So it's actually a much lower percentage of the overall budget. It's a pretty small reserve fund.
I'll give you the 80 legal if we'll go 300 on the reserve fund.
I'm not gonna fight for it. I'm just kind of like, I can see the reasoning behind why don't we shave.
Yeah.
I mean, there was definitely one year on advisory with them when we were discussing for a while about, well, why don't we make it 200?
Yeah.
Like 150 seems like too much, but 200.
I mean, the same conversation happened 2 years later, and I think the same conversations.
And every year I was on, we still ended up at 300. So I know why we end up at 300, but I always feel like, why don't we just take a little time? So I mean, it's just like every year. It's level funded, right? But we always would spend a couple of meetings talking in circles until we came back around to, all right, well, level funding, right? But it's like you have to have that little discussion and just make sure that we do agree that keeping the reserve fund at this level is, appropriate. I mean, to me, the counter argument is that, all right, well, if a boiler blows up in December and you need $50,000. Chances are at the time the town building's budget can still absorb that 50,000, right? And it's just a matter of how is the run rate going? How close to actually hitting your budget are you? And can you make it to the last quarter essentially? Right.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, a bad thing happens in April and that there isn't room anymore in the, town building budget to manage it.
Yeah. But again, I my entire time on advisory, at least where the reserve fund was set was a decision made by advisory. If advisory wanted our input on it, then we talked ourselves into saying just leave it where it is, anyways. But ultimately, I do think that it is advisory's decision where to set the reserve fund.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I just got a text. Sorry. Did you ask me a question?
No, we were just talking in circles.
Oh, okay.
But ultimately, I think Jeremy will probably relay it to Stephen, but I think our recommendation would be to keep the reserve fund at 300,000 and to keep the legal budget at 80.
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I've lost my agenda here.
Next one is me.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. You recall probably 1 or 2 meetings ago, Frank Jenkins was here asking the select board to make the decision as to whether the land acquisition committee should still be in existence. And it opened a discussion of what's the role, what's the charge of the land acquisition committee. And Frank worked with Sam, and Sam picked it up and did a rewrite of the land acquisition committee charge, which actually was I think it's in the bylaws because it went to town meeting to change the charge previously. But what Frank was asking us, one is is the charge correct? And two is, do we even need a land acquisition committee? So what you have in your packet basically is, mostly Sam did this, rewrote the land acquisition committee's mission to see if it should be expanded a bit. And basically, without going into the text, some of the changes are minor and wouldn't require a town meeting vote by any means, but the one that might possibly require a town meeting vote is to add language concerning oversight of town-owned small parcels that are scattered all around town, and nobody really monitors them. And then finally, to act as a communication conduit between the assessor and board of assessors and other town boards and committees. So those would be the additions. It has been argued, the other side has argued, and sometimes I'm on both sides, I've argued it both ways. So this is wide open. And I think Sam agrees that we just want to get your input. One question to ask you guys is, does the extra language really require a change in the charge? That is, could monitoring small town-owned parcels and keeping communication open between the assessors and town boards and committees regarding individual properties, could that be actually assumed if you read the original charge? We proposed adding this just to make it clear what the committee is supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So in future, they're reminded, oh yeah, we're supposed to keep communication open. But then others have argued that, wait a minute, these functions might be performed quite well if the assessors and planning board were already in close communication. So why do we need a land acquisition committee? So being on the committee, I can speak to what the committee actually has been doing or has done. And I admit it's a bit of a kind of job that maybe didn't need to be done, but we did it anyway. And that is to look at all the Chapter 61 properties in town and evaluate them as to whether the town should be interested if they come up for, if they're taken out of Chapter 61 and the town has a right of first refusal. So that was one big one. But then also another thing that was missing was the communication piece. How do we keep all that information high on the radar screen when we need it and have it ready when we need it? So we're just giving you this revised mission, which I think would be fine if we wanted to revise it and bring it to town meeting. It could be argued that we don't need to revise it. And then stepping back, a probably subsequent decision, and which doesn't need to be made tonight, is that do we want to sunset the land acquisition committee? Are they really doing something that couldn't be done some other way? So
I think that should be the first question.
maybe.
And I don't know the answer to that because I don't know enough about, Courtney is on the land acquisition committee, but still I don't know enough about it, which to me, to some degree, it might answer the question of should we just sunset.
I know, I can tell you what they have done, and because I was on it for quite a while. Basically, we identified properties that were under Chapter 61, taking first the biggest ones and then going smaller and smaller, and doing an evaluation of each one, with maps, with environmental maps, we evaluated the potential use to the town as recreational fields or water supply or environmental
the Bay Circuit
protection,
Trail, everything.
or nature trails.
Yeah.
And basically nobody was kind of doing that consolidation of information before. So we felt that we were doing something useful. On the other hand, most of that data was not being used because it only was used if someone called for it, like the select board says, this is coming out of chapter 61. Or how do we find out if it's coming out of chapter 61? Usually we didn't know. And nobody was actually tracking chapter 61 properties, except the assessor, who was not communicating with other towns, boards and committees.
This is very well written. You and Sam wrote this. This is very well written. I was on land acquisition also.
So you
I like the language well because it makes people aware that it's being done, even if it's not necessary. It makes whatever 50 people come to town meeting at least be aware of that the committee exists and this is what they do, and they're protecting your future rights and options.
Yes.
Steve, I just wanted to say that because of Sam's very direct and close involvement in this, I'm gonna recuse and not participate.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I've made some changes. And in order for these changes to be made, it does require a town meeting vote.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
question that you asked along the way is, I think this needs to go to town meeting. And they're not many changes I've made. So I'll tell you them. One is I want to get rid of Board of Selectmen and replace it with Select Board because we've changed the name.
Paul, can I sort of put you on hold here? And
Okay.
can we step back again and get to the bigger question of should we sunset the land acquisition committee? Because I really don't want to spend any time on wordsmithing if we're just going to sunset the committee.
Well, to me, it's a no-brainer that we keep it.
Why is it a no-brainer? Wait, before you say anything, I want to say my perspective and context on the land acquisition committee. Part of this being that I don't think I served on the land acquisition committee, but when I was on the housing partnership, basically was spun back up again at around the same time as the land acquisition committee. And so I attended several of the initial meetings of the newly reformed land acquisition committee. And then subsequently, Courtney is on the land acquisition committee. And so when I say I don't know what they do, it's not because I don't ask. I think it's because they don't know. And so my understanding is that the land acquisition committee was spun up at around the same time as the housing partnership because we were in a 40B crisis, caused by Trask and Ben Stevens and all of that. And we decided that we need to start taking some steps to actually address affordable housing in town. And so one arm of it was to spin up the housing partnership and get a housing production plan going, which we did. And then the other arm was to get the land acquisition committee back together to try to identify larger parcels which the town could potentially acquire as part of local initiative projects to start building affordable housing in town. We never really did that aspect, but we have instead gone to address the sustainable affordable housing issue with the Coolidge Street projects, right? And so I think that's part of the reason why the land acquisition committee has been doing this busy work and compiling this data, which nobody was subsequently using, because the theoretical purpose behind it was, should the town choose to acquire certain parcels of land for this or that reason? But the town has never acquired any of the parcels. And furthermore, the initial purpose for it, which was to build affordable housing, we have chosen to address in a different manner. And so that's why we end up essentially not choosing to buy large parcels of land to do something with.
I would just amend that a little bit. I was on the revitalized land acquisition committee, and I was probably on it for the whole time I was on planning board. And it really was not focused on affordable housing, particularly in the beginning. It was focused on everything, like, could it be housing? Could it be open space? Could it be conservation or used for another purpose, recreation. We did the whole gamut and had a whole evaluation scheme that we evaluated a lot of properties on. And one of the reasons that it could have been potentially useful, still could, I think, is that when a parcel comes out of Chapter 61, the town has right of first refusal.
Mhm.
The timeline is very tight.
Yeah.
And we have to act rather quickly on it. And if we have all the data on that, all ready to go, that was the idea. Let's just have all the data, whatever we use it for. And usually if it's going to be conservation, we would get, Unity Farm or Sherborn Rural Land or someone else involved and transfer the right of first refusal to them. So I think nobody else was doing that. And I think it is a useful thing. I've been on both sides of this.
But the counterpoint to that is that the most recent example of a parcel potentially coming out of Chapter 61, land acquisition was the last committee to be notified.
Right.
So conservation was notified, groundwater protection, open space, all these people, all these committees who have appointed people to land acquisition, but land acquisition itself was actually the last to know. And so ultimately, I recognize that philosophically there is a purpose for the land acquisition committee, right? But practically speaking, it isn't functioning.
That's right.
I mean, Courtney just texted me. She said, "I think the committee is basically defunct at this point."
But if it were still functioning, it could be useful. That is one of the ways in which it was not functioning and hasn't been functioning because they kind of didn't know what to do, was to keep track of the Chapter 61 properties coming on or off of Chapter 61 in the assessor's office. For example, new properties come onto Chapter 61. Nobody hears about it because there's no conduit between the assessor and these individual properties. And basically, most committees who might be interested aren't on top of it because they have so much else to do. They're not, tracking what Chapter 61 applications the assessor is getting. The counter argument is that why doesn't the assessor just communicate this stuff?
I don't see how having a committee be the middleman here is, that reeks of the sort of inefficiency of government by committee. And one of the issues I know is that Billy Frank Jenkins has been the chair of land acquisition since it was reformed. And for years, he's been trying to not be the chair, and yet basically nobody else on the committee has any desire to take it over. And Jackie doesn't even think that that committee as currently formed has been appropriately reappointed. I don't remember.
It hasn't. That's true.
Yeah.
It's definitely
So it's just not working, right? And so unless we can be quite sure that we're going to reappoint new people who are super excited about being on land acquisition and doing all this stuff, I don't see the point of it.
I agree with you there, but if it were optimally functioning, I think it could be very useful.
Yeah, I completely disagree, Steve, because this is an insurance policy of what it is. Because as she said, if something happens, you're not going to be able to respond if you don't have this information on the shelf. Is this the right way to do it? No, but right now it's the only way we have. And it may not be functioning right now, but I think the answer isn't to dissolve it. The answer is to figure out how this function is performed in the town. And right now, no one's, whether assessor, whoever's doing this, language is well written. And I feel strongly that someone needs to do this in the town. And there certainly aren't any town employees that are going to have the bandwidth. So it has to be a committee of volunteers to do it. So I support the Land Acquisition Committee as it's construed, but maybe not as it's implemented.
To me, it's a no-brainer because I was there when these things were organized. And I would second what Marion said, but go further. It really wasn't organized to do housing, although housing was an interest. It was organized because we're a community that has no water other than private wells. And we were constantly having the discussion that ultimately we're going to have to provide water somewhere. We've got to take care of the business district. We've got to do all these things. So we were constantly looking to protect our water, protect our groundwater. And the best way to protect quality of your groundwater is through ownership. Nothing else really works as well. But in addition to that, we were concerned with athletic fields. We just needed more fields. We could project going forward there were going to be more fields, and that there was going to be this issue about overuse of the fields. And so here we are, we're investing a lot of money in laurel fields for irrigation and so on, because we happen to have those fields, but it's not the best water source. The water source and the fields aren't in the same place. But one of the things why we wanted some of the larger parcels looked at is because we were kicking ourselves that we missed an opportunity where there was that tract of land on Coolidge Street that is now Sweet Meadow Farm that was available to us, and they were looking for like $200,000. And I was in favor of spending $200,000 for that parcel for athletic fields going forward. And there were some people who weren't in favor of it. And we had this big debate. But we needed the opportunity. We needed the input from experts, the Frank Jenkins, the Jeff Waldrons, all these people who are familiar with land and what it's possible use for. And in my mind, that was a perfect place for these fields, for new fields, because there was water. It just was a question of traffic and where you're going to park people and so on. But then you have a business there now that's attracting a lot of traffic and so on, and it's working. And it hasn't.
Well, Pheasant Field's a good example too. That's a beautiful facility on Western Ave. That's a really beautiful facility.
Actually, there's another example coming up at this meeting in a moment. We're going to be talking about a proposal to put a cell tower on a piece of town land in the Harrington Ridge neighborhood. And when I saw that on the agenda, I put on my land acquisition committee hat and, it called Tom Trainer. I said, we got to get some maps. We got to figure out, is this even something we would even want to think about? And as you'll see, we put together a little analysis of that property that probably will help, if we make that decision today, which we probably won't be making, but it's just an example. Or a Chapter 61 property also on Whitney Drive that is coming out of Chapter 61 that we've been trying to figure out, how to negotiate with the owner because it's an important potential trail connection. That was not one of the properties that land acquisition had gotten to yet because it was kind of a smaller property.
It was smaller, yeah.
But it would have been useful to actually, when properties go into Chapter 61, it's useful for some group in town to be aware of that because the assessor has not been requiring any kind of even sketch map of what part of the property is Chapter 61 and what is not. So when they come up for coming out of Chapter 61, nobody knows where the line is. And it seems to me Land Acquisition Committee could have been more proactive there in requiring that those properties be better defined. So I guess I'm arguing myself back to my original position.
Which I'm fine with, but ultimately the problem is the actual composition of the committee.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
if you guys who are all so passionate about how important it is want to take it upon yourselves to identify new volunteers to appoint to that committee, I'm all in favor. But I don't think that us sitting in this room and waving our hands and saying this is very important and then expecting somebody else to take care of it I don't think that is very helpful.
No, I
think-
agree with that, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd like to, if I can, call on Sam, who's been very involved in this, to weigh in. Sam Nelson, Chair of Open Space.
You're muted, Sam.
All right, there. Can you hear me? I just wanted to thank Marion for introducing it and giving a very good summary of it. One of the couple of things that weren't mentioned yet is that I think Sherborn is very lucky to have the Rural Land Foundation acting for us. It has been able to take a lot of the burden of larger 61 properties from the town and be able to keep an eye on those properties and purchase those properties in some regard. So the function of the Land Acquisition Committee for larger parcels protected under 61, that has been partially eclipsed by Rural Land Foundation. So I understand what Frank was saying in terms of our mission is a little bit compromised right now. But when we have been updating the open space and recreation plan, we have been required to do an inventory of all town-owned parcels, large and small. And what we've discovered is that our record of smaller parcels is very incomplete. We don't have a full accounting of them all. And those that we know of, we really don't know exactly what is their resource and recreation potential. A lot of these parcels might be potentially great places to connect different trail systems or to connect different reservations. They might have great resource potential that haven't been explored. So one of the functions that Mary and I were thinking, and the rest of the Open Space Committee was thinking that is needed, and we can perhaps modernize the mission of the Land Acquisition Committee, is to begin to take a little bit more attention to these smaller parcels, not necessarily only for acquiring, but also then for helping to analyze and manage them. It's, the select board has quite a few smaller parcels under its management jurisdiction. And I know the select board really doesn't have the bandwidth to be managing these properties. I think the Conservation Commission has many large properties it has to manage and also a lot of smaller ones, and they can only do so much. And I think a lot of the smaller ones fall by the wayside. So I think there is a need in town to take an inventory and a better assessment of these smaller properties that we already own, and be able to do something better with them than just let them sit around and not do anything.
And that could include affordable housing, by the way. Yeah.
Well, can I just add one point to what he just said? It's not just the timeline with the 61A issue. We were dealing with people who die.
Yeah.
And when someone dies, you often have somebody knocking on the door, even while the body is being put into an ambulance, who want to buy the property. You've got to be able to have somebody who can go there and say, we'll meet that offer, or get some intervention going so that everything isn't sold, and the next thing you know, we've got something awful going in there that maybe is incompatible with the community. So there was a sense here that we also wanted to control the quality of life in our community in a way that as parcels came on unexpectedly, if they were gatekeeping parcels, like the entrance to the town and so on, do we really want a gas station there? So some guy is trying to buy it for a gas station and then he's gonna see if he can get the permits and all of that. And then maybe we need somebody who can pick up the phone.
Yeah, and you know, one of the reasons the Land Acquisition Committee was composed the way it was to try to keep them in close touch with all the people that they need to be in close touch with. Planning board, select board in the case of 61 or town road properties, Concom. So yeah, I think for tonight, without wanting to drag this out too far, I would like to propose that we propose a change to the Land Acquisition Committee's mission as written or as revised by Paul. And as a preamble to, that's this part, as a preamble to reappointing a new committee. And obviously it's lost its leader now with Frank in the hospital, but he was ready to step down anyway. And he was one of the ones proposing that the committee be sunsetted. But I feel that with a new bunch of people there, it could still be very useful.
That last paragraph, I wanted to take out a word, the participation word.
Oh, right, okay.
Participation is a word from the State Ethics Act.
Oh, yes, I see.
And so I
We also seek advice from.
Or consultation or something.
Consultation.
But once you use the word participate, those people are barred from participating.
Okay.
And if they participate, then they're violating the State Ethics Act. So it's a trigger word.
Well, what about consultation? Because there's town boards and committees as well as regional conservation organizations.
And I wanted to make that local and regional. Local because like rural land is local.
Oh, of course.
So why not allow them to talk?
Yeah, they are first in line. Yeah.
As opposed to just Mass Audubon, for example, that would be regional.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do both. Other than that, it was good.
There was a comment in the meeting chat from Nora. The success of Woodhaven was brought up last night in advisory. It would be interesting to have another Woodhaven kind of fall under the charge of town initiative housing that's noted.
Right.
Yeah, there's a long history there.
We won't do that tonight, though.
But we did have Leland Farms that was supposedly an expansion and a further step on that road. And we've learned a lot between the Woodhaven project and the Leland Farms project.
There is a waiting list in Woodhaven, probably a demand for senior housing.
Yeah.
Something, another Woodhaven. There might be an.
Right.
You can find a place.
So to try to wind this up, if this
I had a plan for that, just saying.
if this is going to town meeting, we have to either encourage it or not encourage it tonight because there's a deadline coming up. So
I move we put it on the warrant.
Okay, that's what we need to know for tonight. A revised version, we can still take revisions, but
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't need to wordsmith it tonight. I think if we're just deciding to put it on the warrant, then it'll
Right.
go on the warrant and everyone's gonna wordsmith it after that.
okay, so we probably should.
Because advisory is gonna have words to say about it, and who knows, well, stuff to say about it. Michael's got words to say already.
There's violent agreement as always.
I haven't seen what it out there. To what extent are the members of the Land Acquisition Committee, are they appointed from other committees or are you getting new people? This is the issue of when you're really bringing in new blood versus.
Well, I think the charter says that the membership is appointed by all of these other committees, right? So Concom, you guys are gonna be responsible for appointing one of them.
Right, and most of their terms are expired. So it will
I
essentially
tried,
be.
Michael, I tried.
It's hard. I mean, we could possibly find somebody.
But it doesn't have to be a member of Concom necessarily,
Yes.
right?
Right, we have enough problems recruiting people in general. But then whether, I guess the question is whether that should have. I guess it doesn't make a difference because anybody could appoint somebody if we find somebody.
I think two are appointed by the moderator. One by Concom, one by Select Board, one by
Right.
Planning Board.
The moderator, really?
Yeah, two by the moderator.
Mhm.
So it makes
I'm
sense.
not gonna be happy about
Lucky
that.
Mike.
Well, the question is if everybody's recruiting, that any one person will say, I've got an extra person and you can have it as your person. It's just a matter of whether you can really find
Yeah.
enough people who spend the time to Steve's issue, but I guess we could find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Maybe I'm just a pessimist, but I'm not hopeful that you're going to find how many members? 5, 7 with five members that are actually going to breathe new life into this committee. And
But we'll see.
yeah,
Yeah. The other question I was, to what extent can you put something under the assessing department to actually keep some tally, some of these properties coming and going, even though, I don't know, obviously there may be understaffed now, I have no idea. But whether some of these tasks could be
yeah. No, it's-
part of their mandate, so to speak.
I would say that it seems clear that there's going to be 3 votes in favor of putting this on the warrant, and that's all a discussion that can be had in the future when this gets put through the ringer
Right.
to go to town meeting. I don't think we need to talk about. I mean, I could probably talk for an hour about it with you right now, Michael, but I don't think that's going to get anyone anywhere. All right, so do we need to vote to actually put this on the?
Yes, I made a motion.
Okay.
I think it was seconded.
All right, moved and seconded. All in favor? All opposed?
Okay,
And one
And
abstention.
one
And I,
abstention.
yeah,
and one abstain.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Cell tower, cell
Cell
tower.
tower, okay, yeah, cell tower.
Thanks for hanging in there with us.
Mhm.
So this request stems from an email received from Verizon, requesting some indication whether the town would be interested in pursuing a lease agreement, 100 by 100 foot piece of property to lease to Verizon. Parcel 0 Stephen 0 Harrington Ridge Road. There's a map in your agenda showing those parcels, 3 parcels totaling 6 acres. However, they have not provided any other information other than that. Is the town interested? So I'm just bringing this forward to see if there is any interest or not.
the town currently owns the yellow block
Correct.
portion of that.
Those are town-owned farm parcels. I am told from Sean, there's no record of it, that they may have been transferred to the custody of the town forest committee, but that's just from his memory, not from some specific one.
Wait, so is it town forest right now?
You don't.
I don't think it is actually, but yeah, we can check that, but you know, in the open space plan, we did an inventory of all these little groups.
Well, hang on this when you, because I think this is actually pretty interesting thing. One thing do we know is, the new cell towers, what do they call them, 5G? They only have a range of 1.5 miles. So do we know if this is for smaller tower? This is the 5G?
I don't have any of that.
Because those are actually, there's, you see them all over downtown Boston. They're just like cylinders on a pole. So it's not like what's on Farm Pond or whatever.
Does
If
it
it's a
have,
5G tower.
does it have-
To Brush Hill the town of Brush Hill.
Yeah.
And put them in contact with the current leasee there, if they wanted to be a subtenant on that tower. They were interested in that, but were still wanted to pursue this, so maybe it's a different.
Their new model is much smaller towers, but with far less range, so they have to have more of them.
That may be the reason.
So
that
this,
is coming
I'm
up.
guessing just from my telecom
Right.
knowledge, that this wouldn't be a location for mega cell tower. I think it's these 5G things are very small.
Right, but
Would you like, I mean, it's certainly one thing, I mean, we could request more information.
yeah, we would request more information. I
Yeah.
mean, I did put together a few slides just to give you more detail on that property.
Yeah.
Because I think it's probably not a place where I would like to see a company go in and build a road in there and put in whatever.
It might not even need, you have to, I think we need
Yeah,
more
we'd
detail.
we'd have
Yeah.
to get more information.
Well,
These are
what can you tell us about this property and what?
Can you make that image bigger? Presentation mode. There you go. So there's the property. I'm not sure why part of it's darker than the other part, but there's three little parcels in a fairly quiet neighborhood off of Western Ave. And that's the map you have. So let's go to the next slide, which shows that there's pretty substantial wetland going down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And what doesn't show up so well there, it's quite dense forest. And wetland, that's the mapped wetland. I have no idea what the extent of it is right now, but the bottom, the south end of that wetland actually potentially connects to a series of ponds south of Stevens Lane that become Dirty Meadow Brook. That's the headwaters of Dirty Meadow Brook. So that's a property that I think we want to think twice before we let a company go in there and mess it up with whatever.
By Stevens Lane there, you mean, right?
Yeah.
Stevens Lane area.
Right. And it's a big enough property that Sherborn Forest has talked about making a neighborhood nature trail in there for the people in that neighborhood. But yeah, go on to the next slide, which is a lower power view. The parcel, part of the parcel is that little blue square that you can hardly see there. It's right up there, the whole thing. And you can see it's kind of the headwater of Dirty Meadow Brook.
Mm-hmm.
The existing cell tower is really not very far away, up on Brush Hill.
Yeah.
Which is the highest point in town.
These towers are completely different. These,
yeah,
it's not a tower, it's not even the right word.
Yeah.
But if you said that the range is 1.5 miles, then it would make sense if they're interested in both. I mean,
Yeah.
that's about 1.5 miles right there between those two.
Yeah, that could be. That's right. The other thing to notice is that it's right on the Bay Circuit Trail. The Bay Circuit Trail goes right past that property. And that was one reason we wanted to make a little detour, because the Bay Circuit Trail is actually walking on the street at that point.
Yeah, I think I would want more information from Verizon to know what they want to put there. What is the level of disturbance that's going to incur, and what would be their proposal for how much they would lease it for? And I guess, do we have a way of coming up with a market value for that lease?
Right.
Possibly, yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
If you were to entertain such a lease, you'd have to do it.
Yeah, we'd want to know what the degree of disturbance
Yes,
is. See if it's even
Very small, that's what I'm thinking.
It could be small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because if it's a pretty minor disturbance and it's a, 30-year lease and we're getting $50,000 a year for it or something, like, that might be worth it.
It might be worth it if we could do other things with that property as
it's
well.
minimal disturbance and all the rest. Yeah. Seems like I agree that it seems like we need more information.
Yeah.
Right.
Are they unbuildable lots as far as you're?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks to Tom Trainer for the elevation map and all that. So that's all I wanted to say there.
Yeah, yeah, I would
Let's
say,
do some additional information.
Yeah.
Come back and forth.
It's good to know because there may be other property, if they're really thinking of doing this, though, they have to, we don't have 5G coverage. You tell from your phone, you don't have
oh, I
5G.
know, it's fine.
It's much better clarity than, current.
Right. On the other hand, there are other properties around there that might want to lease
Yes.
a piece of their land, like
Yes.
Hardeman's big horse farm is right next to
Yeah.
If we had an inventory of properties, small properties that the select board owned, we might even be able to help steer them to
Yeah.
Yeah,
an alternative.
right.
This is good to know. That's good.
That's where I was. Yeah. That was the subtext.
Pretty cool.
All right, consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Like board reports.
Select board reports, I've already sort of reported mine, which is that the, teachers, union negotiation is ongoing and, the third, bargaining session is gonna be in 2 weeks, and so that will be the last time that any bring new proposals to the table, so it's ongoing. Any other select board reports?
Just a proposal. I want to suggest that we adopt a policy on license renewals that would codify practices, and in particular, make sure that everything we can do to make sure that there isn't any risks to individuals for being assaulted or molested, particularly children. So there are some policies that are out there. The other communities have been working on. And I haven't seen a policy for the town of Sherborn.
So along those lines, Tom, Chief Galvin has come up with a couple sample policies from other communities that could put together and tailor for Sherburne and bring back to the board for consideration.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Wow, I appreciate that.
Any other select board reports? All right, next, TA reports.
Yeah, 2 updates. Today was the bid opening for the Sherburne Historic Items Display Space. And good news, there was 13 bidders. This was the general contract bid. We already had the sub bids a couple weeks ago. 13 bidders, a nice grouping of prices, well within below the architect's below the available funding, real project. The apparent low bidder, there was a base bid and 2 bid alternates. The combination of all of that, the low bid price was $850,000, which is well within appropriation and the private donation. So, we're now Veritex helping with reviewing the low bid contractor to ensure that they're
One place and all.
capable.
Can I borrow your pen too?
A great bid opening.
Charlie.
Yeah, have a real project.
Yeah,
That's great.
great. It's excellent.
And second, wanted to report that the Native Board of Selectmen, the Select Board of Native, at their meeting Wednesday night, approved the IMA for sewer.
Oh, good.
So that is a real document ready for anyone to sign. The previously adopted, you voted approval on now Native Cast, so that's lining up. I've scheduled a meeting next week with the city of Framingham, mayor's office staff and city solicitor to help move along the IMA for the water supply. And
have to sign them.
had a conversation earlier today with Toll Brothers and Anthony Wilson.
Did you just do one?
And the developers of Coolidge Crossing and the apartment age restricted housing. They're getting ready to submit the FEIR. They've got all their comments and are getting ready to formulate the draft of the FEIR in the IQA, the Inter-Basin Transfer Act submission. So,
Are we gonna get to see the comments?
yes. So I asked for a draft of their response, which will have all of that response, the comments and response to comments. NEPA is asking that the district actually be a co-signer of the NEPA permit, which is a little odd, but it's only for the Interbasin Transfer Act portion, not the other things that developers are responsible for. So we'll need to ensure that the draft is written such that it follows just that. But Shaw Brothers and Kenny Wilson will come to the Sherborn Water Sewer District meeting next Thursday. Give an update and to talk about that. I know the apartment portion of the project has been before the Conservation Commission for several meetings and again next Thursday. They will be filing for an updated or revised comprehensive permit with the ZBA shortly. And there'll be a filing with the planning board for the restricted on the well site plan approval. It's there, progress. Great. That's it. All right.
That's really good news. Second.
Yes, Paul.
Issue a motion to adjourn.
I second.
All right. Moved and second and all in favor?
You guys off easy because the Brewers won 4-1 already.
It's good.